Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMALOTN, joined by my guy, Cody Saftic, fresh off his first showing as a matchmaker for the new promotion that he's working for. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter, and we are here propping you up for UFC 276, headlined by two title fights. We got the Aussies or New Zealanders, what are Oceania champions defending their titles here. We got Adesanya in the main event taking on Cannonier. And then on the flip side, we got the third fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Very interesting fight there. Very close to first fights that they had. Interested to see how this third one pans out. Not to mention Sugar Sean finally gets a ranked opponent that he can go up against, and probably stylistically the best ranked opponent that he can get across from him. We'll obviously talk about that later on in the podcast here, but a bunch of other great fights sprinkled throughout. Always love chopping it up with my guy, Cody. Cody, how you doing, my brother? You looking a little rough over there. I don't know if you've been dodging your barber or something or what. What's going on, my man?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm getting married in August, so I was like, I'm just gonna let my. I know once you get married, it's all downhill for you in terms of fun and adventure. So I was like, I'm just gonna let my hair go and last time, and then gonna get a nice cut for the wedding. So probably let it go sometime till August. Take my last run.
Dude, I can't wait to see how you got to let the beard go. You know what I mean, you got to just let it grow out until August, so you have like a clean slate when you do go to your barber to be like, hey, line me up, make me look, like what do they call it, Giga Chad or whatever it is. Give me that like solid beard. Are you? Is that the plan? Is it just to let the beard keep going, or are you going to trim it throughout?
I mean, I'd like to just go with a full-on Aaron Jeffrey look, but I'm not as good-looking as Aaron Jeffrey. So
give yourself some credit, my dog.
Yeah, he's the man, dude. I'm glad to see he's picking up some big victories too. Yep. That was a good one. So, anyways, life's been good. We got through the show. Show went according to plan. I mean, there's some fun fights. Got some good buzz. The company was happy with it. So that was all well and good. And then, just got like a million things going on. But always have time for a UFC card. Always have time to chop it up with you, top some props. And this is a nice looking card. I mean, generally we talk about fight nights. And sometimes you even have to argue with people about like, this is a good fight night. Like Cerrone and Gamrot's a good fight, I assure you, which it fucking was. But whatever. That's another argument for another time. This is the kind of thing that a casual can get on. Like, I know my boy Robbie Lawler has been done right. He's on the main card now. But just goes to show you how loaded it is that even a casual fan is going to recognize a lot of these guys that are featured on the prelims, right? So, I mean, nice looking offering, and the only thing that can make it better is if we can find a couple trustworthy spots. Because straight up, my confidence was shook. A guy like Cody Law goes and loses to Bellator. That PFL card was an absolute trash can. Like, just woof. I don't know if these guys are taking dives or what. Like, not the Emilio Sordes of the world, but some rough business over there. So. Faith in humanity restored. Action Man got the job done. So we just need to zone in on like the faithful Action Man types and go with that moving forward. And thankfully, I think there's a couple decent looking favorites on this card.
Absolutely. All right. Before we get into the card, let's give quick shout outs, obviously, to the All-Star for hosting us as they always do on a weekly basis. Make sure you guys hit them with the like and subscribe below to let them know that you guys enjoy the content that we bring you guys on a weekly basis, like I said. Secondly, shout out to betonline.ag, one of the best bookies out there for MMA, regional MMA, UFC, all that stuff. They got you covered. Not to mention, they're usually the first guys on the block with the odds for you. So make sure you guys go check out betonline.ag. They'll match your initial deposit up to $1,000, 50% of it, I should say, up to $1,000. Link is in the description below. And then secondly, shout out to Cloudbet, the bookie that is working closely with us in terms of giving props to you guys. That's exactly what we're quickly going to go over from UFC Vegas 57 here. We'll quickly go over the event props that me and Cody talked about at the ending of the last episode. So let me just bring that up over here. So the hype train wins. That was the first prop that we had for you guys. Only two of them won, and that's Tsarukyan, Rakhmonov, and Nurmagomedov. Only two of them won. Obviously, Tsarukyan shit in the bed in the main event. Plus 129 is what you would have gotten if you picked two of them, which was much better than parlaying Nurmagomedov and Rakhmonov straight up. So shout out to Cloudbet for giving you guys another way to parlay some of these big favorites and getting better lines. Total Tsarukyan takedowns under 3.5 cashes as he only hits one. So shout out to Gamrot for that great takedown defense there. Secondly, we had total rounds completed, ended up cashing on the under 23.5 at plus 110. There was 22 completed rounds. Now, before I go on to the total submission and total KOs, I got a quick clip that I want to bring up from last week that just showcases Mystic Cody.
I got Rachmanov for the knockout. I've got potentially Umar Nurmagomedov, unless he snags me with a submission after that, but Chris Curtis with the knockout. You know what? Maybe not. Maybe about 3 knockouts.
Minus 120.
Yeah. I feel like there's going to be 3 knockouts and 3 submissions. So you would hit the under on the knockouts and the over on submissions.
There you go. Get the hook on both of them there. And he called it to a T. It wasn't the exact fighters that he said.
Yeah.
But there was 3 submissions. So the over 2.5 hits there at minus 125. And then there's 3 knockouts. So the under 3.5 hits there at minus 120. What do you think about your handiwork there, Cody?
Yeah, good stuff. Unfortunately, the action man didn't get that knockout at minus 120. But the money line is actually better at minus 115. So they played it that way. Unfortunately, this is the prop show. What can you do? It looked like that body work was going to add up, but he couldn't let his hands go because he knew he was just going to have to defend takedowns the whole time. C'est la vie, stylistical clash.
Not to mention, minus 700 for that fight doesn't go to decision, and it goes to decision. So it was just one of those nights for sure. Who will record the fastest finish on the main card? It was Thiago Moises. That cashes for plus 800. He gets the quick submission victory over Christos Giagos. Let's move on to the last couple here that we had. Fight of the Night award was to Arman Sarukian and Mateusz Gamrot, plus 1,000. That cashes. And then fastest finish on the entire card, Cody Durden at 1 minute and 8 seconds cashes at plus 1,600. He lets his handiwork do the talking, and he gets JP Bays out of there. Right behind him was Carlos Ulberg. He was 7 seconds after Cody Durden, and if he had cashed, that would have been plus 1,900. But shout out to anybody that took Cody Durden to get the quickest finish, because JP Bays, man.
Oh, man. Bum. Lesson learned, but still, shouldn't have put myself in that position. No chin Bays.
Yeah, it did not look good.
Dare I say...
Don't you do it, Cody. Don't you do it, Cody.
All right, we can go into the fights this week.
All right, let's move on to this week. So we got a stacked card for you guys. Obviously, it's a pay-per-view card. 12 fights. I believe it's a 6 p.m. Prelim start time. So make sure you guys set your alarms for that one. But let's get this going. First fight of the night, we got 2 women's MMA bouts kicking off the card. First of which is Jessica Rose Clark coming in at minus 150, taking on Yulia Stoliarenko coming in at plus 130. Now, I tried getting the Cloudbet guys to put this prop up, but I know there's a couple other websites that allow specific submission props. And you got to believe the favorite for Yulia Stoliarenko has got to be the armbar. There's a reason I call her the Lithuania Ronda Rousey, because 8 out of her 9 wins, all armbar victories. She snatches up that arm and she tries to take it home with her. And I feel like that's something that's going to be live here against Jessica Rose Clark, who obviously came out on the short end in her last fight to Stephanie Egger. And I believe she lost that fight as well by armbar. So, Jessica Rose Clark has really turned into that jack of all trades type of fighter, where she doesn't rely on one thing specifically, but she does like the grappling more than anything. And it feels like if she tries to take that approach here against Yulia Stoliarenko, probably not the way to go, right? Stoliarenko is quite offensive off of her back. She's going to keep Jessica Rose Clark working. And if Rose Clark makes even a little mistake, she will end up paying for it. And we will see Stoliarenko add another arm to her mantle there over at home in Lithuania. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here, right? Striking wise, I think Rose Clark might have the slight advantage, but I think that the experience and the grit is probably on the Stoliarenko side, right? Just go back and watch that Lisa Versosa fight from Invicta. Good God. Just Google Versosa and Stoliarenko and just look at the images that come up. It is just a bloodbath of a fight. Most of the damage being dished out by Stoliarenko, just cutting up the face of Versosa and painting the entire canvas red that night. Probably just as red as my shirt, to be honest. But great fight, very violent fight, but that just goes to show what kind of fighter Stoliarenko is. She wants to go out there and try to finish you. She wants to get you out of there. And I feel like here against Jessica Rose Clark might just go back to her habits of trying to grind this fight out, and that's just not going to work out for her. Stoliarenko will likely be the stronger one in those positions. I think she's a judoka as well, if I'm not mistaken, and that will allow her to kind of, it doesn't always work out for the judoka, but I do think in this situation, with her slightly being the bigger woman in this fight, she should be able to get those better positions. And I do think that at a certain point, she'll be able to find that submission. So the spot that I was looking at the most was obviously Stoliarenko by sub, and that was hanging around plus 350 the last time I looked at it, and it's still roughly around there. You can get plus 400 at a couple of spots, but I agree that Rose Clark should be the favorite here, but I just feel like we're going to get one of those spots where, you know, women's armbar from guard pretty much is what we're going to be set up for here. How you can't, you know, or sorry, I believe there's more chances of that happening than Rose Clark actually grinding out Stoliarenko here. If you guys even go back and remember that Stoliarenko versus Kunitskaya fight, that was one of those weird fights where you have Kunitskaya wanting to keep the fight in the clinch position up against the cage and just rough her up there. And Stoliarenko is doing everything in her power to try to just fall to her back or pull guard. And Kunitskaya is literally holding her up with her double underhooks just so she doesn't get dragged to the ground and having to get into that mess of that BJJ and offensive nature that Stoliarenko has off of her back. So I'll lean Stoliarenko here. You know, I do think a lot of it is based on her getting the finish, and I do think she'll end up getting the sub here, plus 350. I think that's kind of mispriced, man. I think that's a large part of her win condition, as you can truly see from her record. So that should probably be, you know, closer to her money line, maybe like plus 200 or something like that. So the fact that we're getting plus 350, plus 400, that's an auto bet for me, especially against a girl in Rose Clark who she makes mistakes on the mat, and you can't make mistakes against a girl like Stoliarenko. So give me Yulia by sub plus 350. What about yourself, Cody? Am I not giving Clark enough credit here, or am I on the nose here?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're on the nose in terms of it's probably just like a 50-50 women's MMA bout that could go either way. So at least you landed on the plus money side of things. And of course, her by submission makes a lot of sense. And at plus 350, again, you could go wrong. But I don't think this is the kind of fight you could have a whole lot of confidence in. Like, first and foremost, talking about Yulia Stoliarenko's armbar game, like who exactly has she armbarred? So she's to defeat people on the Lithuanian regional scene that are 0-1, 0-2, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 4-1, but I bet you check out what she's up to these days. 0-0, a Lethway match, 2-4. She fights that Invicta fight, which was a great fight, but it's a split decision. It was a competitive fight, blood everywhere, but a competitive, hard-fought bout. So on one hand, it's like, yeah, she snatched up these arm bars over very limited competition. On the other hand, as far as the UFC goes, she's lost both of her outings. All three of her outings. She's 0-3 with the promotion. And in fact, 1-3 in fight stateside, with the one win being a split decision. So, yeah, it hasn't looked really good. That being said, that Alexis Davis fight, Davis is a legitimate BJJ black belt. She got a deep bite on that arm a couple times. Like, holy, maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. Now, you mentioned Jhass Rose Clark's slight striking advantage. I don't think so. I think it goes the other way. You look at Stoliarenko, this is someone that fought in Myanmar. She's fighting Lethway, you know, Burmese bare-knuckle boxing champion. She brings it. She's aggressive. She stays in the pocket. She was defeating Julia Avila in the striking exchanges prior to Avila just deciding to grapple. And, of course, she was defeating Alexis Davis throughout the entirety of that second round with the striking, prior to Davis thankfully falling on top of her in the third and scoring one takedown in the first. So her stand-up game, the thing with Rose Clark is that look at her performances, she's not looking to strike. She's looking to grind up against you. And her numbers are very, very low. The Stephanie Egger fight, she had landed 2 strikes in 4 minutes before getting caught in the armbar. The fight before that with Jocelyn Edwards, she got outstruck by Jocelyn Edwards like 30-18. 18 strikes landed over 15 minutes, but it's the 5 takedowns. It's the grinding you up against the cage. Something that judges aren't really scoring all that effective anymore, is just holding on to somebody up against the cage. But that's where she's going to thrive. Now, Stoliarenko, maybe she's a judoka, maybe she's not. Her takedown defense, awful. It's really bad. And her ability to get back up, not that good. She'll throw up arm bars, but she's got no get-up game. So the worry here is that Rose Clark is big, strong, physical. Obviously, you've checked out her Instagram. The girl comes in good shape. She takes her strength and conditioning very seriously. If she's able to muscle her up against the cage, which we've seen other people do in the past, if she's able to complete the takedowns and get out of harm's way ASAP, she'll have a lot of success from top. So this is just an ugly fight. Rose Clark's a pretty girl, but it's an ugly fight otherwise. I could see it being a lot of cage control and grinding, and Jhass gets the job done. I could totally see Stoliarenko either jumping to guard on the armbar and getting a good bite on it, or creating some distance, keeping her back off the cage and actually outstriking Jhass Rose Clark, who the longer fights get dragged out, the striking battles she's been in, the more damage she gets. Like even, say, the Jessica I fight. First round, she's very competitive. Second round, it's slipping away from her. Third round, she's getting boxed up. The Penny Kianzad fight, she's getting doubled up on the striking numbers. If you can stop those takedowns, you can box her up. And I think Julia could do that. So I'm actually going to agree with you in terms of underdog money goes. I think this is a live underdog. I've also learned my lesson with betting women's MMA favorites. It just doesn't happen, Doc. It just doesn't happen. So maybe put it near the pass category, but officially, I'm taking what you're taking. I would just take the straight up money line to get the plus money on Stoliarenko, but because this is a prop show, the best looking prop if you want to go for it, submission plus 350.
Yeah, I just did a quick scan the other day in terms of minus 200 or higher favorites in women's MMA over the last 5 events are 1-3. The only one being Valentina Shevchenko, which was still, a nail biter in a
Greasy.
sense, right? Very, very close fight there. But,
Yeah.
we had our own Canadian Jasmine Jazz Duvicious fall short as a minus 240 favorite. We had Gloria DePaula fall short as a minus 220 favorite. There's one more that's kind of escaping me at this moment, but that there's been a lot of like these big favorites start shitting the bed.
Well,
So
last weekend with Vanessa Demopoulos,
yes,
this is the
that was the other
problem
one.
when you're a former
Continue fight.
stripper. You know what I mean? The
Yes.
judges are more
Stripper.
inclined to be like, yeah, I like this girl. Here's a 10 next to the other girl's 9.
Shout out to Jaron Villel giving her a 30-27.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Jaron Villel knows what's up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Another women's MMA bout, like we said. We got Jessica Ai taking on Macy Barber. Red alert here. We got minus 285 on Macy Barber, plus 240 on Jessica Ai. Now, Jessica Ai is riding a 3-fight losing streak, which comes at the hands of Cynthia Calvillo. That was a main event back in June of 2020. Can't believe it was a main event, but it was a main event nonetheless. Then she falls short at UFC 257 against Joanne Calderwood, pretty much getting doubled on significant strikes here, losing that one. Then the Jennifer Maia loss back at UFC 264 in July of 2021. She outstrikes Jennifer Maia by 2 strikes. I remember it being a very close fight, but I remember there was a headbutt, I think somewhere in round 2, that opened up a cut on Jessica Ai, and I feel as though that may have, swayed the judges a little bit, thinking that Jennifer Maia was landing the more damaging shots. I had a bet on Jessica Ai, so there might be a little bit of bias here, but I did think she won that fight. I went back and looked at the MMA decisions. It seemed like the fans were all over the Jessica Ai side. Media more so was split down the middle, but she can keep fights competitive. And I know she has that weird public perception, right, where she does that stupid underdog chant and everybody just gives her shit for that. Like she just doesn't have a great public perception, which I think in part affects her betting lines at time, right? And I feel like that's exactly what's happening here. Mix that in with the hype / not hype of Macy Barber, right? She kind of fell off of that hype chain she had when she came into the UFC, but picks up that solid win over Montana De La Rosa a couple months ago. And now she's trying to get a solid name in Jessica Ai under her belt here. I feel as though it's going to come down to the physicality of Macy Barber, which will allow her to kind of squeak away in this fight, similar to what she was able to do against Montana De La Rosa. If the fight's close, she can wrap her up, push her up against the cage, land some good strikes there, and maybe land a takedown or two to try to sway the judges. But should this be a 15-minute kickboxing fight, it could be goddamn close, man. Jessica Ai can put out some numbers. Macy Barber's really not, blowing you away with crazy output numbers or volume numbers or anything like that. So I think that this fight is just going to be a little bit too close, especially to pay close to minus 300 on Macy Barber, which is why I would rather take the fight goes to decision. That's at minus 250. You're getting a slightly better price on the fight goes to decision than you do on Macy Barber straight up here. And Jessica Ai, outside of the Valentina Shevchenko decapitation, she's been quite durable, right? Like it's been very difficult to get her out of there. She's only getting finished in submission grappling tournaments pretty much. Shevchenko was the last person to finish her in MMA competition. But even before that, yeah, she's never actually been finished outside of the Shevchenko fight. I know Macy Barber had that knack of finishing women earlier in her UFC career, but we know this, Cody. It happens time and time again. As you take steps up in competition, it gets harder and harder to put some of these opponents away. And I think that's what we're going to see here. So I'm expecting a close fight. I'd rather take the fight goes to decision at minus 250 than take Macy Barber, but I am going to take Barber to win by decision. That's currently sitting at minus 115, so even money roughly there. Yeah, give me Barber, but good God, that money line is ugly here. What about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, ugly look at money line. If I liked Barber specifically, I think I would try to improve the tag by going with Barber by decision. I agree with all your points. I think Ai's pretty durable. I'm more inclined to take the fight goes the distance, which is at minus 260. Not a very good price tag at all. But I think that whoever wins the fight probably going to be a drag him out affair. Of course, Jessica Ai does have the slicker boxing. Maybe she has a little bit more volume. She's a little more seasoned. She's experienced. She's actually taking the fight with a full camp, whereas you've got Macy Barber coming in replacing Casey O'Neill. So you know what I mean? Maybe there's some good stuff to go with Jessica Ai. What I would recommend, though, is 100%. You're going to want to go ahead and wait until the weigh-ins for this one. Jessica Ai does not make 125 pounds well. She never has. She's coming off a year-long layoff, and she's 35 years old. Every indication that this will be a tough cut. Now, look at her record real quick, right? This is going back. She fights at 135, right? She fights Betchko for the last time, loses, if you can believe that, but at 135 pounds. Now, Kalinja Faria, 126 on the money. Didn't look good in that fight. Rose Clark, 126 on the money. Caitlin Jakagi, 126 on the money. I thought she lost that one. Fights Valentina Shevchenko. Now you got to make 125. Okay, make 126, championship weight. And makes the weight, looks terrible, and then gets deaded with the head kick. Not someone known to get knocked out. Of course, it is Valentina Shevchenko, and it is a head kick. But one has to wonder if it wasn't the weight cut. Now, this is the last time she picked up any type of victory or submission in submission grappling or MMA, was this fight with Viviane Arroyo. Although you'll notice that she came in at 131 pounds for the fight with Viviane Arroyo. That's a full 5-pound weight miss. Not good. The very next fight was Cynthia Calvillo, 126.3, which means she missed weight by 0.3. Okay? You went from 131 to 126.3. Back-to-back weight misses, not good. Now, she has been able to get her weight back on track since, but the Joanne Calderwood fight, you just see her fall behind on the numbers. I thought she had a good cut in the Jennifer Maia fight, put up a good fight. The headbutt definitely led to a lot of it. On a personal note, a little bit of bias. I had Jennifer Maia. I thought Jennifer Maia did win the fight, but it was very close, very close. And you're competitive against a former title challenger. That's all well and good. But then she pulled out with an Andrea Lee fight with health issues. And then she pulled out of a Mano Fiorot fight with eye issues. Now she's had a full year off. Now she's coming back. Again, 35 is I wouldn't say old for MMA, but old for 125 pounds. Can we not agree with that, right? She's got to come back from that year-long absence, make the weight, come down to 125 or 126, and then take on Macy Barber, who's big, strong, physical, and going to be looking to push a pace on her. So I would say that Barber eventually breaks on through and is able to either get her to the ground or land, she's got good elbows, good knees, good work in the clinch, dirty boxing, and just push that pace in order to win that decision. So the official pick would be Barber by decision. But if you don't mind paying like the minus 260s of the world, I think the best value is just take the fight to go the distance. Even if she blows out her knee like the Roxanne Modafferi fight, falls on over, she probably still survives.
Yeah, Jessica is going to definitely make this fight a lot closer than the odds indicate.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that it's going to go the full 50 minutes. So why take the chalk? Just take something that's a little bit more surefire with this fight going the full 15 minutes. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. Big one here at 185. Andre Muniz riding a solid winning streak. Not just winning streak, but first round finishes. I believe he has 3 straight now over Bartosz Fazbinski, Ronaldo Jacare Souza, and Eric Anders. He's taken on Uriah Hall, who last time out fell short against Sean Strickland in the main event back in July of a fight night card. Now, he was expected to fight Andre Muniz back in April. Hall had to withdraw, and now they're remaking the fight here for UFC 276. In terms of odds, this kind of surprised me. Minus 330 for Andre Muniz and plus 270 for Uriah Hall. This is one of those spots I feel like we have to kind of pinpoint to be like, hey, like the public's getting a little bit far too ahead with a guy who's on a bit of a finishing streak, right? The most recent example that I think we have here is Andre Fiallo, right? Like he goes out there, has a couple first round knockouts, and all of a sudden he's a solid favorite over a tested veteran in Jake Matthews, and people expect him to go out there and do the same thing against Matthews. We saw how that turned out. Now I get it. Matthews a little bit more reliable than Uriah Hall, but Uriah Hall still has what it takes to give a guy like Andre Muniz trouble. Uriah Hall never been submitted in his MMA career, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, got finished by Gegard Mousasi, I believe, which was the last finish that he received. But in terms of his grappling defense and submission defense, on point. He dealt with 10.5 minutes of control time against ACJ, a much bigger and maybe even more credentialed BJJ specialist than Andre Muniz, and he managed to stay safe and dish out damage while being controlled. That's ultimately what gave him that fight. Maybe I hold a little bit of resentment towards Uriah Hall that night because I had some decent money on ACJ that night. I thought I'd be able to take him down, control him, and possibly even submit him. But Uriah Hall, very on point, like I said, with the submission defense, defending against a rear naked choke well, not just defending against it, but dishing out damage while he's defending against it. So great work from him there. But he's been known to be the flaky guy, right? That's why people like to bet against him at times. But he did win that Antonio Carlos Jr. fight. He did knock out Anderson Silva in the 4th round of his main event back in October of 2020. becomes the first ever guy to win via knockout without throwing a single strike against Chris Weidman back at UFC 261 in April of last year. And then obviously he fell short against Sean Strickland in the main event, like I said. But here, it wasn't that long ago that I remember a lot of people shitting on Andre Muniz after that performance against Antonio Hoyo. Like, yeah, he won that fight, but that was a sloppy fight. That wasn't a really good showing for either guy there. And I believe he was the underdog in his next fight or two. But I'm not impressed. Okay, I am impressed from a BJJ aspect with Andre Muniz, but what happens if he doesn't get that first round submission? Is he continuously going to get Uriah Hall to the mat? Is he continuously going to be able to threaten with submissions? Or will Uriah Hall start to break through as he normally does later in fights and then find that finish later, like he did against Krzysztof Jotko or against a guy like Bevon Lewis? Like, we can see him do those types of things. So surprisingly, I'm leaning on the Uriah Hall side, right? We really have to take note, like I said, of these situations where guys are riding finishing streaks and the public's very high on them, but at a certain point, it's going to stop. I think it's going to stop this weekend for Andre Muniz. I'm going to take a shot on Uriah Hall at plus 270 because that money line is just a little bit too crazy. But even his KO line, that's sitting at plus 350, plus 400 at certain spots. I think that's a damn good spot. I think you can find that chin of Muniz and put him away late in this fight. Even if you want to get cute with it and go Hall via KO round 3, that's currently sitting at plus 1,700 up to plus 2,000 on certain spots. That's been his sweet spot is getting late finishes and waiting for guys to kind of slow down, and then he can finally let that big power go. Muniz, not the greatest striker, definitely more of a grappler than he is a striker, and I think we're going to see that change here the later that this fight goes. Fight doesn't go to decision is another spot that I'm kind of keen on. That's currently sitting at wow, it's actually minus 400. So I'm not gonna tout it too much as a minus 400, but I don't think this fight reaches the scorecards. It's either Muniz gets that early sub, which historically speaking doesn't work against Uriah Hall, or Uriah Hall gets a late finish in this fight and puts away Muniz. So give me Uriah Hall KO plus 400. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm thinking this is the exact same thing. Like, it's obviously an underdog shot. It's obviously a punt play. Plus 400 is a wicked price tag. But yeah, I just think in things that are plausible to happen, this is one of them. So you basically hammered every point that I want to make. But just a couple to add in there. Andre Muniz has 4 career losses. All 4 of them are by knockout. And by the way, like, fairly early into rounds. The first one is a 1-rounder, and then Doctor stops it after the first. The second one against Douglas Moura, 251 into the very first round. The third one against Julio Cesar dos Santos, minute 5 into the second, and then he got dropped by Mirzakhanov 50 seconds in. So whereas you're saying Uriah Hall probably knocks him out late, and again, I probably agree with that statement, I think Hall could clip him at any point. This guy does not have a good chin. Now, again, look at the rest of his career as well, right? Here's somebody that gets on The Ultimate Fighter, right? He took on Bruno Assis on The Ultimate Fighter. Or sorry, on Dana White's Contender Series the first time around. He defeats Bruno Assis by decision. It's a bad fight. Dana opts to not sign him and give him a contract. And Bruno Assis, for the record, got TKO'd by my boy Aaron Jeffrey. Just saying. They passed on him the first time. The second time he comes in against Taylor Johnson, who's a bona fide bum, like worst ring IQ you've ever seen in your entire life. And Johnson just takes him down and gets submitted. So on one hand, the guy's got a very clearly, a very adept submission game. On the other hand, he needs to fight a certain level. And so far, that's been it. A win over Bartosz Fabinski fights not very smart. A win over Eric Anders, I'm just not a very, very big Eric Anders guy. A win over Jacare, legit. Who the hell summons Jacare? Nobody. Yeah. But little grain of salt at least, Jacare ain't exactly what he used to be. Somebody that's going to go out there and fight back, somebody that's going to stuff a couple takedowns, somebody that can survive for a little bit, and somebody that can touch his chin is going to do some damage. Hall's 37 years old, but he's still very fast. He's got stuff that you don't see coming, like the flying knee, the spinning hook kick, stuff that he's used effectively in the past. But he's also got his bread and butter, the jab, the right hand. I think he's got a lot of weapons that could, in theory, knock this man out. Now, in terms of can he get submitted? Listen, he's got 27 pro fights and 4 fights on The Ultimate Fighter that count as exhibitions. Never been submitted in his career. Has fought like 5 BJJ black belts. I understand hasn't fought in a whole lot of grapplers, but has given a good account of himself. And of course, you mentioned the ACJ fight. ACJ is currently making $1 million to fight in a bum-ass PFL tournament at 205. And you don't look out of place. This is a big man. A big man that was on Uriah Hall's back for like 10 minutes. Hall defended everything. So he's never been submitted before. It's crazy to say that he might be able to survive those early exchanges with Andre Muniz. And if he does, he's going to be still in the fight and he'll be able to clip him late. This is a guy that's been full-time out of Las Vegas for a long time. He's trained with the best of the best. He doesn't always come up with the big victory, but I mean, he's a perennial training partner to world champions, and he's fought a pretty solid, legitimate level of competition himself. So I think he's live as an underdog. And how would he get the job done? Probably by the knockout. And what's the price? Plus 400. All right. Sign me up. Let's hope there's a little magic left in the tank, because we've seen this guy do it before, and it's plausible that he might be able to do it again on Saturday.
Yeah, that's crazy that we're 3 fights into this card and we're both already on 2 underdogs in this spot. And I think that's a sign of things to come, because there are some live underdogs on this card, man. I was kind of surprised when I was skimming the odds pre-tape, and then after writing the tape, I'm like, oh shit, like maybe this guy should be the favorite. Why are these lines so off?
Yeah, well, spoiler alert. I think I got a lot of favorites going forward, but I will admit, like, there's a couple of these close 50-50 type fights. I don't know. We'll talk. I got one more dog. We got one more good underdog coming up. We'll have to talk about. But yeah, well, and what you're noticing on the UFC every week is that, like, these women's MMA bouts, right? They fly under the radar. The underdogs have been cashing him and coming through, right? Andre Muniz, he's a flavor du jour type guy. Like you said, it's very easy to get behind somebody like a Fiallo, like somebody who comes in and they've got a quick, run of quick knockouts, and they're very exciting. And then all of a sudden it's like, but what's the real stylistical clash? And I think Muniz's case is that he's not fighting any strikers. And you know something interesting? If you go back and watch that Antonio Arroyo fight, Muniz lands 13 strikes in the first round, right? And then the second he lands 7 because he's already gassed. And in the third he lands 2. He's all the way gassed out. So yeah, like when you win 3 fights in a row by first round finish, everybody loves that, loves it. Like it's not showing you the grand picture, the bigger picture here, which is like, how good's his cardio if he doesn't get that first round finish? So you're seeing the same things I'm seeing. I'm happy about that. And this next one, I don't know what to think. So let's get at it. Tavares to Plessis. Like, what the hell is Plessis doing out there?
This one's going to be a very interesting one. Like I said, Tavares against Duplessis in terms of odds, minus 150 on the South African and plus 130 on the Hawaiian, who obviously calls Las Vegas home for the last several years now. Intriguing fight, right? Primarily 2 strikers going at each other. Obviously, Tavares a little bit more lenient on the output. He kind of relies on combinations and putting his handiwork together, mixing in some head kicks every now and then. Duplessis, that guy likes to go out there and just knock his opponents out, right? There's no other way about it. Like, he likes to go out there, put his put his fist on your chin and try to knock you out. Pretty much, that's how he's won the majority of his fights. That's how he's won the majority of his UFC bouts as well. Since coming to the UFC, he's 2-0. Got touched up a little bit by Marcus Perez early in their fight before he eventually found that left hook to put him out. And then obviously we saw that shellacking he put up against Trevin Jhass before knocking him out in that second round. But Brad Tavares, in my opinion, is a little bit more of a complete striker than those 2 last guys that we saw Dricus Duplessis go up against. It's all about, can Brad Tavares put it together once again? It feels like he's been inside the UFC forever, but he's only 34 years old. He made his UFC debut. Well, he was technically on the Ultimate Fighter Season 11 back in 2010, but made his UFC debut in June of 2010. So it's been almost 12 years now that he's been inside the UFC. He's gone on a couple good runs, a couple 4-fight winning streaks, 5-fight winning streaks, but always ends up hitting a rough patch against like the top of the top, right? Yoel Romero, Tim Boach knocks him out in the second round back in August of 2014, loses quickly to Robert Whittaker back in 2015. And then obviously his last 2 losses were Israel Adesanya back in July of 2018, and then Edmund Shabazian knocking him out with a left head kick halfway through round 1 back in November of 2019. So he can be clipped. He can be hurt. And that's kind of my hesitation in terms of actually betting Brad Tavares in this spot, because I like the plus money beside him. But good God, does Dricus Duplessis have this crazy godlike knockout power once he's able to connect with his opponents, especially the way that he's built. He's able to generate this crazy amount of knockout power that once he's able to swing his hips and swing his shoulders with that strike and find that chin of his opponents, he puts them out. And we've seen it time and time again. So that is my hesitation here. So the 2 props that I'd be looking at to play here from either side, obviously Duplessis by knockout, that's sitting around minus 195, or sorry, plus 95, plus 195 or plus 200. And then on the flip side for Tavares, not much of a finisher, right? He more so relies on his volume. He doesn't really put the most onto his shots to try to knock his opponents out. So Tavares by decision is plus 175. Either or, right? Like I'd be surprised to see Duplessis to win a decision here. He'd have to get a knockdown in 2 rounds and have that outweigh the volume that's going to be coming back his way. Or he just gets outstruck and loses a decision to Tavares. So probably the toughest fight to call on the entire card. I like to lean more so with the guy that has the overall tools to win the fight, and that would be Brad Tavares here. But it's so hard to go against guys that have that godlike knockout power that seems like Duplessis has. So I'm going to lean more so on the Tavares side here. I'm going to say Tavares by decision, like I said, plus 175. But good God, like I said, this is the toughest one for me to call on the entire card. And it seemed like you were quite hesitant about it as well. So I'm interested to hear you talk this one out. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, good fight, of course. I think it could go either way. Brad Tavares, he's a lot more seasoned. He maybe has a little more volume. He's a little more trustworthy in that you know what you're going to get. But yeah, it's the betting against Duplessis and his power. I mean, the guy absolutely cracks. He's got the ability to go out there and land that left hook. And listen, the guy's got just heavy, heavy power. When you're Brad Tavares, you're not someone that's necessarily shown to be chinny. But at the same time, here's my issue with Brad Tavares is that he has been dropped 4 or 5 times. His chin doesn't seem to be particularly great about me. And he's another guy that I think is almost beneficiary from soft-ish matchups. Look at his fights, okay? Amari Akhmedov, this is his last fight. Amari Akhmedov, not a striker, okay? The one before that, Antonio Carlos Jr. Antonio Carlos Jr., not a striker. Both these guys are grapplers. One BJJ, one combat sambo. But to get into a striking battle with them for 15 minutes, not exactly their specialty. Evan Shabazian, a striker. Evan Shabazian absolutely fucked him up, right? Drops him twice in the fight. Head kick puts him away. Absolutely buzzsaws through him. Has had zero success in the UFC since then, but absolutely kills Brad Tavares. Why? Because he's actually a real striker. The fight before Izzy Adesanya. He went the distance. Admirable. He got outstruck 119-40. He missed with almost all of his punches. Bad performance. But Izzy's a good striker. You'll see this on repeat. His wins, Jocko, Talis Latis, Lai Theodoru, Ko Magalesh, all of which are considered bad strikers. The one before that, Robert Whitaker, knocked the fuck out. So he's very serviceable. If you watch him in his first UFC fight and you watch him to this UFC fight, there's not a whole lot of progression there. He fights the exact same. He doesn't try to take you down. He stands in front of you. He throws relatively the same combinations. He spans the same leg kick. He's the same prototypical fighter that he's always been. But there's real no progression there. And of course, when he fights good strikers, he gets knocked out or gets soundly outclassed. And when he fights the Amari Akhmedovs or the ACJs of the world, guys that are live or die by the takedown and they can't get it, he can make those type fights work for him. Against Strikers Duplessis, I think that he's going to land some punches. The problem with Brad Tavares is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. In 20 UFC fights, he's won 2 of them by knockout. Christoph Jocko and my boy Phil Baroni. Only guy on the roster with a win over Phil Baroni, by the way, in case you were wondering. He's been around the block a long time. He hasn't really shown to have big power. And so what I think this is going to be is 2 strikers going at it. But Brad Tavares will land a 2-3 punch combination, and Dricus will eat it, walk through the pocket, and land one of his own. And I think those are going to be the heavier, more impactful blows. I think eventually he's going to clip him. So to be honest, I got Dricus winning this fight, but I think I'm going to try to chase that plus 195 by knockout.
I don't mind it at all. You definitely have the facts to back it up. And historically speaking, like you said, when he does go up against big strikers, they definitely can find that chin of Brad Tavares and put him out here. Man, I'm staying away from that fight. I want nothing to do with it. Anytime Duplessis fights for some reason, I just have a hard time, really picking out whether he should win or not. Again, a lot of it is based on him finding the opponent, his chin's opponent, and putting them out. It's worked out so far in the UFC. It's worked out. He has a 16-2 record. Not bad. Not to mention a big knockout victory over, one of the best fighters outside of the UFC, Roberto Soldic, who obviously did get his revenge after that.
He knocked him out.
Yeah, exactly. So he can knock out pretty much anybody. So he's definitely live to do so here. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. We're looking at Hype Train on the card here. Ian Garry, 9-0, going up against Gabe Green. In terms of odds, not Hype Train like odds though, right? He's minus 170 here against Gabe Green, who comes back at plus 145. Ian Garry, solid prospect, solid striker. Had a pretty good run on the Cage Warrior scene. Obviously became the champion over there before getting signed to the UFC. I still have question marks about the kid. Gabe Green is a guy that's going to drag him into a serious battle here. He's going to drag him into a war. And I'm not sure if Ian Garry is going to be up to task here. He's the better technical striker. He can probably traverse the cage a little bit better. He might be able to use his reach and his length a lot better than Gabe Green. And Gabe, at times is a little bit wild and winging with his shots, which should allow Ian Garry to kind of snipe him from distance here. I've been battling back and forth in regards to how I want to approach this fight. I do end up coming out on the Ian Garry side. The only thing holding me back is the type of fight that I expect Gabe Green to make this, right? Like I said, it's going to be a war. He's going to be moving forward pretty much the entire time. He's going to be throwing big bombs. He might even knock down Garry at a certain point. It all depends on Gary's resiliency, ability to battle back from adversity. And this is, I think, the first time we're going to see him battle true adversity inside the octagon. And we'll see if he can actually dig down deep and come out with the W here. I am ultimately going to lean on his side. I think his technical work from the outside will prove too much for Gabe Green. Gabe just gets hit way too much for my liking. Sure, he has a ton of power, but if he's getting out finessed by his opponents, like it seemed like he was against Daniel Rodriguez, I think he's in for trouble here. So I'll go Ian Garry. I think the hype train rolls on here, but I think at a certain point, we're going to have to hop off that train because I do see some deficiencies in his game that ranked guys will be able to take advantage of. I just don't think that Gabe Green is going to be the guy. When it was announced initially, I'm like, we might get plus 300 on Gabe Green here. That's what hype trains normally do, but it seems like the public is privy into how Gabe Green can make this a tougher fight for Garry than it should be. But I still do think that the Irish prospect will come out on top. I'm going to take him. Let's call it a decision. Gabe Green's head is built like a cement block. The guy is hard to put away, especially at this point in his career. So I do think that Garry outpoints him on the feet, touches him up, wins his fight via decision. Garry by decision currently sits at plus 200. Not too bad of a line on the flip side. If you do think Green finds that chin of Garry and puts him out, plus 450 for Green to win by KO. Not too bad of a look there, but I'm going to go with the Irishman here. What about yourself, Cody?
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I'm going to go with Garry. First of all, Gabe Green is a perennial underdog. Like, if you can get plus money for this guy, you feel good about betting it because he'll fight to the death, this man. He just keeps coming forward. He keeps letting his hands go. He's got a lot of heart. He didn't have great durability on the regional scene, but so far in the UFC, tremendous durability. Fighting for your dollars. So anybody that's getting my plus money, listen, I completely understand. With Garry, though, it seems like this is a good stylistical clash that favors him. He likes guys that come forward and try to brawl. I mean, he likes to try to use his footwork, create angles, and then be very much a counterpuncher. So in the last fight with Darian Weeks, I feel like Weeks wasn't really engaging him. It turned out being a sloppy fight. Jordan Williams was kicking his ass, but of course, Jordan Williams made the mistake of eventually trying to brawl with him and came forward face first, and Gary's able to intercept him. This one I've got somewhat mixed feelings on because if Garry does what he's capable of, he goes out there and gets easy money takedowns. I mean, the guy's a judo black belt. You haven't seen it in his 2 UFC fights because he's yet to complete a successful takedown. But certainly if you go back and you watch the Cage Warrior stuff, the guy's a pretty adequate grappler. Flip side to that, with Gabe Green, he gave up 2 takedowns to Johan Lioness, which is a fairly big no-no. He got taken down by Philip Rowe twice. Philip Rowe rocks with 33% takedown accuracy. He's 4 fights into the UFC. He's only taken down 1 guy, and it was Gabe Green. He took him down twice. And then, of course, he got taken down by Daniel Rodriguez as well. So he gives up takedowns in all of his fights. They're usually pretty predictable takedowns. They're generally not exactly high-level stuff. But what happens is that it's a war, and they're tired, and it's a drag-him-out fight, and he's able to prop back up to his feet and get right back on you. I think if Garry minds his P's and Q's, he just takes him down and is able to neutralize him from top position, score some ground and pound. The other problem is this kid's young. He thinks he's Conor McGregor, which he's very clearly not. And as a result, he wants these exciting finishes. He wants these exciting fights. Gabe Green's there to give you an exciting fight. So do you take that way out and wrestle the guy? And he's been doing fights leading up to fight week, basically being like, oh, I was upset with my last performance, and I messaged Sean Shelby and said, I can do way better, and I want an exciting fight, and I want to entertain the crowd, and I got Gabe Green. So, if you get lulled into brawling with this guy, it's not going to be good. Because has anybody thought Ian Garry has looked good in either of his 2 UFC fights to this point? No. He looked terrible against Williams, but was able to catch him. The Weeks fight, I don't know, I wouldn't say he looked terrible, but just lackluster, I suppose, just kind of went through the motions. Green's going to bring the fight to him, only I'm expecting that to bring out the best of him. So I got Garry, and unfortunately Garry by decision, same thing as you, simply because Gabe Green's got one hell of a chin on him, and I don't know enough about Gary's submission game to think that he's going to snatch something up if the fight does hit the ground. So plus 200 Garry by decision, I don't mind that.
I like it. Again, I do think that eventually that trade is going to stop, but Green, he'll give us some more information on Garry for sure in terms of how he deals with adversity and deals with a bulldozer and a bull like Gabe Green, but finesse sometimes outwits the bull for sure.
When Gabe Green beat Philip Rowe flat gassed. You know, when he fought Johan Linus flat gassed. With Garry, it's not that I don't think he could gas out. It's that like he fought 5 rounds for Cage Warriors and looked totally fine. He's 24 years old. Like I don't think he'll gas to the same level as those other guys. And again, right, we talk about Gabe Green's chin, and it is very good. It's very solid. It's very durable. And in fact, if we do got Garry, we got Garry by decision. But one thing is, like, he did get iced twice on the regional scene fairly easily. And then he did get dropped pretty hard by Johan Linus. He made a quick recovery. So I wouldn't completely rule out, like, it's not like a decision's an absolute lock, but at plus 200, I think it's the most, obvious path to victory, I would think. But yeah, you got to learn your lesson about betting against Gabe Green at some point, and you got to learn your lesson about riding these wonky ass hype trains like Ian Garry at some point. I'm just hoping both of those don't meet on Saturday, and that's the crossing point, right? Give me one more softie for Garry, and then we'll fade him in the future.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the next one here, and we got UFC veterans going at it here. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Jim Miller. Jim Miller obviously stepping in for Lozon. Cerrone Lozon seems to be, old school version of Ferguson versus Khabib, where they just can't get him to match up. But Jim Miller steps in for a rematch that took place. Let me just get the correct date here. I believe it was 11 years ago in Atlantic City, where Donald Cowboy Cerrone was able to finish him not once, but twice. If you remember, you heard him to the body and then eventually finished him on the feet as well. Just pulling it up here. Cowboy Jim Miller. Where is it? Why can't I find it? Jim Miller. 2014. Sorry, it was 8 years ago. Almost 8 years to the day. It was July 16th, so 2 weeks shy of 8-year anniversary of their fight. But yeah, head kick and punches is how we defeated them way back in the day. And they've both had a different run since then. Obviously, Cowboy Cerrone was able to notch a title shot against RDA where he got blasted pretty early, but he did manage to put together a 12-10 record since the last time they fought. Although it was 12-5 at a certain point, then he went on a 5-fight losing streak, which is what he's currently on right now. And then on the flip side for Jim Miller, he's gotten 10-11, but he's gotten a couple more victories more recently than Donald Cowboy Cerrone in the last couple of years. But look at the level of competition that Cowboy Cerrone has been going up against, whereas Jim Miller's just been, dusting some of these contender series guys or these short notice guys, and that's why he's still able to get some green on his record. With Cowboy, you go from guys like Tony Ferguson to Justin Gaethje to Conor McGregor, which was, let's face it, a toss-up match for Conor to just get back in there and get his feet wet. And then obviously he loses that close fight against Anthony Pettis. Should have lost the fight against Nico Price. Had it not been for a bunch of those points being taken away. And then obviously he takes on short notice Alex Morono. He was originally scheduled to fight Diego Sanchez that night. In steps Alex Morono on short notice and just blasts Cowboy, almost at the ending of that first round. But we know that's been the kryptonite for Cowboy, right? Slow starts. That's kind of plagued him throughout his career, especially in big spots when he feels confident coming in on a big winning streak, but then his opponents are able to blast him early and then get him out of there. Like I said, Morono was successful in doing that. Now, what I find interesting is that he was a minus 170, minus 180 favorite against Joe Lozon the couple times that they were scheduled over the last month or two. And I feel like we're getting somewhat of a similar fighter here in Jim Miller. Maybe Jim Miller a little bit more reliable with his durability, but a lot of their success, Lozon and Miller I'm talking about, comes in the first round. So why all of a sudden we switch it to Jim Miller? And now Jim Miller's a minus 200 favorite. Let me see what the actual line is here. But the last time I saw it was minus 200. I'm seeing minus 175, minus 180, minus 190 on Jim Miller. I don't get it. This should be closer to a pick 'em fight, right? We know what Jim Miller's path to victory is. His last last 3 victories have all come under 1.5 rounds. That's his sweet spot. He tries to clip you early, tries to get that submission going. If he can't get it going, he'll probably knock you out. If he can't get that going, he likely goes on to lose the fight. The last time you won a fight by decision, 6 years ago, I believe that was UFC 205 against Thiago Alves, the ghost of Thiago Alves. He beats him by decision. But it's not often that Jim Miller can go the distance and actually pull it off. If Donald Cowboy Cerrone does not get blasted early in this first round here, I think he starts to find his groove and really starts to touch up Jim Miller like he did in their first meeting and starts to run away with this in the second and third rounds. I know a lot of people are dead set on the fact that Jim Miller is going to clip him and put him out. And if you are of that thinking, you're getting plus 250 on Jim Miller to win in round 1, much better than his minus 175, minus 180 money line. But that is the bulk of his win condition. Sure, if you want to extend it into the second round, he's gotten a couple finishes in the second round as well. Miller to win in round 2 is plus 450. So maybe sprinkling your action between those two, or if you have access to one of those books that allows you to have round 1, round 2, that might be the best way to take it for Jim Miller. But I think we see Cerrone take that early punishment and then come back and start to win rounds 2 and round 3 and pull away with the decision victory. And the decision prop for Cowboy Cerrone is a juicy plus 500. Crazy to me. Plus 550 now. He's plus 550 to win by decision. Jim Miller, a lot of people think that he's easy to put away later in the fight, but a lot of his recent losses have forced him to go to a decision. I don't know if Cowboy Cerrone will be able to put together combinations to put him away early in this fight. I think he's just going to try to touch him up, stay safe on the outside, and just outpoint Jim Miller with his striking. So I am leaning Cerrone. I might have a bet on his money line, but even his decision prop, like I said, is very sexy at plus 550. I think he touches up Miller, outpoints him on his way to a decision victory. Again, on the flip side for Miller, plus 275 to win by KO. Club and sub is obviously possible. Submission is plus 250, but inside the distance for Jim Miller is plus 110. Best spot, in my opinion, for Jim Miller, round 1 plus 250. Otherwise, Cerrone takes over. What about you, my man? Are you surprised at how wide this line is, or do you think that Miller just rolls over him? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think that the line's particularly accurate. I think that I would favor Jim Miller, but on a 2-to-1 basis, like I don't know. It's a fight that's come together late. A lot of the things that I would like to fade about Cerrone, namely, look how bad he looked on the scales prior to the last Joe Lozon potential meeting. Right? Looked terrible. Looked like he'd been in a microwave, died in the desert, fried up, and Lozon's the one that pulls out. So him making 155, I'd love to fade him. Unfortunately, they're giving him a favor by moving this fight up to 170, right? At 170 pounds, he's going to be a lot more filled out. He's not going to have a dirty weight cut. And Jim Miller is a guy that's been largely fighting at 155 pounds as well. So that new weight, it actually does favor Donald Cerrone. The other thing is Donald Cerrone is all about confidence. He's always been about confidence. If he thinks he can win, he's confident. And he gets rolling in there. And mentally, he's in a good place. He goes out there and he performs. When he's worried, when he thinks he's going to get his ass kicked, when he thinks he's not in shape, that's where he performs poorly. So if they're giving him a guy that he's already beaten, who he legitimately beat the crap out of, I think he'd be feeling good about himself. So if I've got a Cerrone on a good weight cut and a Cerrone that's confident, I'm going to get a much better version of him than I'm anticipating. And at that kind of plus money, yeah, maybe worth a shot. But
sorry, one thing I just want to add. This fight's at welterweight as well.
That's what I'm saying. That's
crazy weight cut, right? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's at 170 pounds, so he's not going to have to make the weight cut down to 155. So he should be feeling better. It's an opponent that he's already defeated. Therefore, he's going to have some confidence. And those are two of the things that when I'm fading Cerrone, I'm worried. I'm banking on him having a bad weight cut, and maybe mentally not being into it. So yeah, I think the UFC's put him in a better position to succeed. This is a winnable fight for him. The money line doesn't necessarily reflect that. So. I agree with all those points, but I still end up going with Jim Miller. Like, part of the reason I was going with Joe Lozon is, one, I don't think Donald Cerrone is in good shape. I think at 39 years old, the old cowboy's all worn out. He's just got this number in his head where I got to make it to 50 fights. I got to make it to 50 fights. But it's not like I got to make it competitively to 50 fights. He's just dead set on this number. He's been partying. He's been filming movies in Thailand. I don't think he's in great shape. And I expected Joe Lozon to go out there and have a fast start on him. He's a notoriously slow starter. Get the pounce on him. Joe Lozon unfortunately pulls out. Jim's going to come in and Jim's going to do much of the same. Jim's a fast starter. He's one of these guys that tries to take you out in a round and a half. That's perfect because you need that quick jump on Donald Cerrone. Miller's been spending a lot of time working on his boxing, but his combinations have gotten a lot better. The overhand left's gotten a lot better. You see him go out and knock out his last 2 UFC opponents using his striking. I feel like he's got enough power. I feel like he's got good enough boxing that he could clip Donald Cerrone. If he does, he's got to put him away quick, and that's what I'm going to go with. I will 100% agree with you. Donald Cerrone has fought in the best guys in the sport twice over, right? The list is very exceptional. Tony Ferguson, Gaethje, McGregor, Pettis, you name them all, right? It's the Alex Morono fight. That's where shit falls off the rails. Alex Morono has almost 20 UFC fights, 10 of which are wins. He's knocked out 2 guys. He doesn't have power. He's not a power puncher. He's punched guys with his best shot 10 times in a row in the face. They've taken it. Morono is not a power guy. Donald Cerrone shells up the second he gets hit. It's like his equilibrium's gone, his balance is gone, and all of a sudden he's just shelling up and gets TK'd in the first round against Morono, who took the fight on short notice. It's a bad look. He hasn't fought in a year. He's gotten older. It's not as if he's training particularly hard. He's got other business ventures. He tried doing a little bit of submission grappling. Both times he got submitted. Joe Solecki finished him in 3 minutes. Then you've subsequently seen Joe Solecki spend about 25 minutes on people's backs since then and get nothing out of it, by the way, right? So I don't think his grappling's top-notch. I don't think his striking's top-notch. I think his body's in bad condition. Yes, his fight's at 170. Yes, he's beaten this guy before. I can't put my hard-earned money on Donald Cerrone in 2022. Now, is that saying that Jim Miller's a good bet? Not necessarily. Is Jim Miller a good bet? A minus 220? No. Minus 200? No. Minus 170? Probably still not, but a little bit more to my liking. But yeah, I think if you take Miller, you probably take Miller by TKO or Miller, under 1.5 rounds and approach it from that angle. So I am still going to take him, but I'm going to agree with a lot of your points for sure.
Not only are they fighting to get both of their paychecks this weekend, but they are fighting to be number one in terms of most UFC wins as well. They are both tied with Andrei Arlovski right now for 23 UFC wins. If whoever comes out on top will hold that sole number one spot with 24 UFC wins. Not to mention total UFC fights. Jim Miller will be entering his 40th UFC fight this weekend. He sits at the top at number one. Cowboy Cerrone will go on to tie Andrei Arlovski for 38 in second place. So record book shit on this fight between Cowboy Cerrone and Joe Lauzon. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because you just know how long they've been fighting inside the UFC and how weathered they are at this point.
They've been so long at it where it's like two fights ago, Cerrone Lauzon. It's like mysterious illness canceled. It's like, yeah, his body stopped. And then they rebook him versus Lauzon. It's like, oh, Lauzon mysterious
arthritis or something.
Yeah, like his leg locks up and it's like, let's book versus Miller. What's the worst that can happen? It's like Miller's got Lyme disease. It's like, oh man. So they're the old dogs on the block, no doubt about it. But Miller's relevant. He's picked up 2 legitimate wins. The win over Moda, not bad, dude.
Yeah,
whereas
impressive.
He hasn't fought in a year. He used to fight 5 times a year. Now it's his first fight in 12 months. His body's a little banged up. He's been spending time in Thailand. He's been shooting movies. He's got the Budweiser sponsorship. He's a celebrity, right? There's more to life. Whereas like Miller, him and his brother Dan, they were always like the quintessential blue collar boys. And I just feel like, it maybe means a little bit more to go and get revenge for Jim Miller than it does to just beat the guy up again for Donald Cerrone.
For sure. All right, let us get to our prelim headliner here. Banger of a fight we got between Brad Quake Riddell and Jalen Turner. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 140 for the Tarantula and plus 120 the return on Brad Riddell. I spent a solid 3 hours tape starting this fight last night with my Patreon members. Very fun fight to look into. Both guys have a banger catalog of fights to their record. Finishes here and there or just absolute wars that they've gone through in the past. And pre-tape, I was leaning on the Brad Riddell side, right? I was like, why is all this money coming in on Jalen Turner, taking him from like a even money favorite all the way up to a minus 150 favorite? But then you run the tape and then you see, okay, it kind of makes a little bit of sense as to why. But a lot of his success has to be leaned on the front loading, if I'm saying that properly, in terms of a lot of his finishes come under that 1.5 round mark, right? He uses his length, his speed, and his ability to put his punches together so accurately to ding his opponents up that he can either drop them and club and sub them or just club and drum them, pretty much getting them out of there with ground and pound as well. He loves to use his lead right hook whenever he's in that southpaw position, and he can just use it in so many different ways and so many angles that it catches opponents by surprise because of how quickly he's able to let it go. Right, I believe it was the Callan Potter fight, or it might have been the Joshua Coulibaugh fight, where he uses it to fake an uppercut, and he gets his opponent to bite on that, and then he comes over top with the right hook and knocks them out that way as well. Very, very impressive work, but a lot of his success is dependent on that speed and being able to get to the target before his opponents are able to get to him. But we do see it in the Matt Frevola fight. We see it a little bit in the Brock Weaver fight before he eventually tags him and eventually chokes him out in that fight late in that second round. But something that is prevalent in Turner fights is he starts to not slow down, but you don't see him stalking his opponents as effectively as he is in round number 1 as he does later in fights. And that could pose him some troubles here against Brad Riddell, who likely will accept the back foot early in this fight. showing respect to the speed and the power of Jalen Turner early in this fight. But as it starts to wear on, Brad Riddell might get some confidence, and he might be the one trying to push Jalen Turner back. But the thing is with Brad Riddell, a lot of his success comes from getting his opponent to accept to exchange in the pocket. And I'd be surprised if Jalen Turner is going to be there at any point to exchange in the pocket to the point that Brad Riddell could get a knockdown or a knockout of some sort, because I think that's what he's going to need to outwork Jalen Turner, right? I think Jalen Turner averages about 6.5 strikes landed per 15 minutes. And then on the flip side, for Brad Riddell, it's about 4.5. So he hasn't beat by like 2 significant strikes landed per minute there. And you see it in his work, right? Even if he doesn't put a lot on it, he's just throwing it out there to kind of maintain his distance. A lot of straight 1-2s down the middle, using the teep kick up the middle, using the front kick up the middle, even bringing it up to the face if he needs to because of his length. Because the guy is a lanky motherfucker at 155 pounds, 6'3" with the 80-inch reach, right? Like absolutely insane that he's having those types of metrics as a lightweight, because he's going to have a solid height advantage here. I believe it's roughly about a 6 or 7 inch height advantage that he's going to have. Sorry, he has a 77-inch reach. So a 6-inch reach in height. Yeah, 6-inch reach.
And 8 in height, 6 in reach. Yeah.
8 in height and 6 in reach, which is crazy, right? I can't wait to see them square off tomorrow at the weigh-ins, because that's going to be a sight to behold. But that's the advantage for Jalen Turner, is always going to be the length, the speed, and the ability to establish that distance. It was hard watching the Brad Riddell tape to be like, this guy is a good comparison to Jalen Turner. There is no good guy to look back on Brad Riddell's record and be like, this is a good comparison to put to Jalen Turner to see how he reacts with dealing with taller fighters. You'd have to go back to watch the Kanan Song fight. And even Kanan Song is only 6 foot, right? He's still 3 inches shorter than Jalen Turner. And we saw Brad Riddell attacking the lead leg first and then eventually starting to go up top. And that's how he was able to get Kanan Song out of there. I believe it was a body shot, which led to shots to the head that got him out of there. So I just don't see Riddell closing the distance effectively enough to land his big shots. And I think Jalen Turner should be able to cruise from the outside. I do have concerns, though, should this fight go late, because if Turner does start to, let the foot off of the gas a little bit, I think Riddell is going to move forward and really start to put it on him, and he could start to pull away with this fight later on. I'm seeing a lot of love for the fight doesn't go to decision, and I think that's more so based on the Jalen Turner side of him getting maybe a finish within the first round and a half with his speed and his agility. I don't know if Riddell will be able to get that knockout later in this fight if Turner does start slowing down. So I'm leaning Turner. Inside the distance. That's plus 135. Turner by sub is a sneaky one here. Plus 700 for him to win by sub. I think that's very, very sneaky, especially considering one of the finishes that Brad Riddell has on his record is via armbar. I'm sure he's shored up his grappling since then, but if he gets clubbed here, he might get subbed by Turner. And then on the flip side for Riddell, plus 290 for him to win by knockout. I'm just not a big believer in that. Again, he's almost a modern day Sean Shirk in terms of his reach at a certain type and the way that he fights. A lot of it is pocket exchanges for him to have success. I just don't see him having it here. So I'm going Turner inside the distance with a little bit of a sprinkle on that plus 700 on Turner by sub. What about yourself?
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take the dog money on Brad Riddell, but I agree with everything you're saying. And so what I want to do is I want to hit Brad Riddell after the first round, live bet. Because he probably got plus 300 after the first. He probably gets his ass kicked. Jalen Turner is long. He's lanky. He's extremely athletic. He's fast. And the boy is getting sharp, man. His hands are just getting way better. You saw in his last fight with Jamie Malarkey, he absolutely dissected him from range. He's definitely a problem for a lot of people, right? When you talk about how do you prepare against this guy, I don't know. I don't know if you're like, yo, Izzy, you're only about an inch taller than him. Mind helping me out? Like, holy shit, dude. This guy's a lightweight, 6'3" with a 77-inch reach. Huge. But at the same time, I think there's a lot that Brad Riddell does bring to the table. So when we talked about earlier in the show about Andre Muniz and how everybody likes Andre Muniz because he's doing really well right now, well, it's very much the same thing with the Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner's on a slick little run right now in which he's dissecting and beating up limited level of opposition. The guys he's effectively fought are Jamie Malarkey, Uros Medic, Brock Weaver, Josh Kulabau, Kalen Potter. It's low level. Which one of those guys were strikers? Which one of those guys were elite level strikers? Which one of those guys could wrestle as well? And so that's kind of what makes me think that there's a little bit of intrigue there in Brad Riddell. We know he's tough. We know that he can get hit, he can get hurt, but he can also survive. He got hurt bad in the first in the fight with Drew Dober, right? First round, hurt bad, overcomes it, ends up winning the fight. His last fight, unfortunately, did win against Fiziev, but he's getting hurt pretty much the entirety of it, and he's able to roll with it until the third round where he gets his lights put out. He's tough enough to face some early adversity. The other thing is he's actually lost the first round in his last 4 fights. He lost the first round against Fiziev. He lost the first round against Dober. He lost the first round against Alex da Silva. He lost the first round against Magomed Mustafayev. But in all those fights, he makes the adjustments because he's durable, he's got cardio, and he's got decent enough ring IQ. The other thing I want to talk about is the 5 takedowns against Drew Dober. In the Dober fight, he realized exchanging in the pocket, which is where he's at his best, Brad Riddell, also happens to be where Drew Dober's at his best. So he wanted to get away from it. So he switches up the game plan and goes after these 5 takedowns, in which his wrestling looks career best. Even his last fight against Fiziev does manage 1 takedown, but Rafael Fiziev, very, very difficult to take down these days. Brad Riddell's got an underrated wrestling game to go along with world-class striking. And I think that's important to note because with Jalen Turner, being 6'3" is his benefit in that he's super tall and lanky, but I don't think his takedown defense is all that good. He got taken down by Jamie Malarkey. He got taken down by Brock Weaver. He gave 4 takedowns up against Matt Frevola, almost at will, by the way. I would say if you stand in the pocket, you exchange a couple shots with him, and you're able to press forward and maybe mix in some takedowns in the mix. I think this is a good way to sap his gas tank, eventually tire him out, eventually make him a little slower, cause him to fight off the back foot, make it greasy. And I think those are all spots that Brad Riddell is able to thrive in. I'm fully expecting him to lose the first round. I'm fully expecting to get a much better price tag after the first. So I think as a live betting opportunity, that's where I would go. Because this is a pre-fight betting show, and also we're going after props, I would lean towards the Brad Riddell by decision is the prop that I would like the most about it. But again, this is all stuff you'll be able to get a lot better after we take a mauling for the first 3 minutes. And the flip side, because as you saw 2 weeks ago, no fight got out of the first round. If there really is this big talent discrepancy, if Jalen Turner is billed as advertised, and he might be, the guy might be a special talent, and he smokes us out of there in the first round, well, you don't got to worry about it. But if you take that beating and we're still there, I got a feeling that he's going to be able to turn the tide.
That was kind of one of my big leans on Brad Riddell, was with the fact that he could implement his wrestling. Like you said, 5 takedowns against Drew Dober. The only thing that was kind of discouraging for me from seeing that fight, though, is he only managed to muster up 2.5 minutes of control time there. So not the greatest in terms of holding his opponents down. Jalen Turner can be taken down, you're right, but he does a good job in terms of nullifying guys getting dominant positions or even riding him for long periods of time. I think Frevola is probably the better grappler between Frevola and Riddell themselves, and probably the better jiu-jitsu player than Riddell as well. And even he was having, slight periods of resistance in terms of keeping Jalen Turner on the ground. Not to mention, Turner has definitely massively improved since that fight with Matt Frevola. I believe that was UFC 236, same night that Adesanya fought Gaslam. So it's been a while ago, and Turner's definitely been making improvements. But you are right in the fact that this is the best striker that Jalen Turner has had to go up against since Vicente Luque in his UFC debut. Talk about a hazing in his UFC debut. But no, we'll definitely be able to find out a lot about Jalen Turner this weekend, as we will about Brad Riddell. So great matchup. Seems like we're on opposite sides here, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this one shakes out. All right, that wraps up the prelim portion of the Propping You Up show. Shout out to the 100 live viewers that we have with us on this Thursday afternoon/evening. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe to let the All-Star crew know that we are doing our job by giving you guys the best props that we can for every upcoming UFC card. Once again, another shout out to betonline.ag, one of the best sports books out there for MMA betting. Not only do you get the UFC, but you can bet on Bellator, PFL, KSW, BFL, Cage Warriors, CFFC, whatever you want. More than likely, BetOnline has odds for it, so make sure you guys go check them out. They'll match your initial deposit up to $1,000, at least 50% of it, if you use the link below. So make sure you guys go show them some love. And then obviously, shout out to Cloudbet as well. We got a very interesting prop for the Pereira and Strickland fight that I'll hover over once we get there. But then we also got a great a group of props for the entire card, as we normally have, specially made for the Propping You Up show. So stay tuned for that. All right, Cody, let us get into the main card here. First fight to kick off the main card, 10 p.m. Eastern, is Sean O'Malley's first test against a ranked opponent. And in my opinion, couldn't be an easier fight for him in terms of stylistically. We got Sean O'Malley going up against Pedro Munhoz. in terms of odds. We're looking at minus 290 for Sean O'Malley, plus 245 for Pedro Munhoz, who's in the midst of a 1-4 run in his last 5 fights. The only win in that stretch was against Jimmy Rivera, where he was able to beat up that lead leg, that calf, and really cause some issues for Jimmy Rivera that night. He outstruck him by nearly 30 strikes that night, and went on to win a unanimous decision in a fight of the night performance there. Fight before that was, I believe he was a big favorite against Frankie Edgar. I think he was like minus 300 that night in that pay-per-view, or sorry, that main event slot on a fight night. And he ends up coming up short. Say what you want about the decision. He still ended up losing that fight. Say what you want about it. Still came out with the L. You still had to rip up your ticket if you had Pedro Munhoz that night. That's what matters at the end of the day. And then most recently, losing to Jose Aldo, where we saw almost a recent career best performance from Jose Aldo, right? We really saw him let go with his boxing, great body work in that fight. But that's the type of fight you're able to have against a guy like Pedro Munhoz, who's kind of plodding and slow at times, doesn't normally have the speed advantage over his opponents because he just likes to stalk his opponents, throw big shots, lean on the leg kick, calf kick whenever he can. But that's kind of his spot, right? Like, he's a BJJ black belt, solid jiu-jitsu, but he never goes for takedowns, right? I believe since 2016, he's only attempted 2 takedowns. The last time he actually landed a takedown was against, where is that here? John Dodson, which is a fight he actually ended up losing in 2018. Sorry, it was 2018. So since the John Dodson fight, he's only attempted 2 takedowns and he hasn't completed any of them. So for you guys to go out there and think that that's what he's going to do here against Sean O'Malley, it's very difficult to say a fighter's going to do that when he historically doesn't. Even though it looks like an obvious play for them, it's not obvious to the fighter themselves because they believe in the other tools that have gotten them to the dance and are keeping them at the dance. Dominic Cruz, another fight where as soon as I saw that it was lined up, Dominic Cruz and Pedro Munhoz, I felt it was a great spot for Dominic Cruz. I thought a lot of people were overlooking that Cruz could just dance around him and outstrike him for as long as he could. Sure, he gave up a knockdown in that fight, but he still went out there and outstruck him by 30 strikes, even landed a takedown of his own that night, winning that fight by unanimous decision. Sean O'Malley, like, this is the perfect matchup for him, man. Just stick and move as best as possible. Use your range, use your footwork, try to nullify the kicking game of Pedro Munhoz, which is probably the best part of his game. And he should be able to cruise here, right? Don't put too much onto the shots. Don't overextend too much so that you can get countered, or don't stay too close enough that you'll get your leg chopped off. But this seems like the perfect matchup for Sean O'Malley to do what Sean O'Malley does. Maybe not get the knockout. Like, the knockout prop for Sean O'Malley is currently plus 160. I'd need a lot more than that, because in the 7 career losses for Pedro Munhoz, never been knocked out. In all the fights that he's had in the UFC, never been knocked down either. The guy has a chin made of granite, and I don't think that Sean O'Malley will be the one to crack it. Sure, he has the resume that says he might be able to, but Pedro Munhoz's chin is just on a completely different level. So I would need like closer to like plus 300 on O'Malley by KO to be able to pull the trigger on that. I am more so leaning with O'Malley by decision. That's currently sitting at plus 150. I think he just sticks and moves, doubles, maybe even triples Pedro Munhoz on numbers here, and takes home his first ranked victory of his UFC career. What are your thoughts for this one, my man?
Yeah, again, along the same page. It's just, I think Pedro Munhoz is a dangerous opponent in that he's super durable, never been knocked out, took all of Jose Aldo's best shots for 15 minutes. So he's going to be there for 15 minutes against Sean O'Malley. He's also got a nasty leg kicking game, right? He used it to great effect against Jimmy Rivera, but you remember that fight with Brett Johns back in the day? He drops Brett Johns 3 times. He completely destroys that front leg. And it's like, damn, this guy's got a legitimate calf kick. When you look at Sean O'Malley, he should have lost the Andre Sukmantath fight had Sukmantath just quite simply stood up, and he ended up losing the Marlon Vera fight because of a busted leg. He does not deal well with leg kicks. He's got these tall, long chicken legs with no real muscle on them, and I feel like the leg kicking game is going to be to great benefit. That's one thing about Pedro Munhoz. He can go up there, he can take your best shot, and he can march you down, and he can try to land those leg kicks. The other thing about him is that he's got extremely good volume. He landed 117 against Brett Johns in 15 minutes. He landed 105 against Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling's very difficult to hit. Aljamain Sterling danced around him all night. He still landed 105. That's still big, 166 against Frankie Edgar, although it was a 5-rounder. Jimmy Rivera, 94. Jose Aldo, 75. Dominic Cruz, 74. These guys are fast. These guys are world-class. He's still landing over 70 strikes on all of them. So that's my one worry with O'Malley. Is like, O'Malley will stay to the outside. He'll beat him with the punch all day long. He'll be faster. He'll be longer. 72-inch reach, that gives him a 7-inch reach advantage. And yes, he'll be able to use every bit of it, because you've seen with Pedro Munhoz, a guy with a 65-inch reach, he struggles with his everybody. Everybody except for Cody Garbrandt, who coincidentally also has a 65-inch reach, right? So these longer guys have always had more success against him. These guys that are faster and rangier, good footwork. This is the big cage. It's not in the apex. That should yield a whole lot of success. But no doubt Young Punisher is going to be in his face the whole time. No doubt he's going to be trying to counter. No doubt he's going to be trying to take out the lead leg. If the fight was to hit the ground, there's a significant advantage here for Pedro Munhoz over Sean O'Malley. So he's actually got a couple decent paths to victory, but I got to agree with everything you're saying. The last couple times I've watched him fight, it's just like he's like a deer in the headlight. There's such a speed discrepancy from the outside that he allows his opponent to lead the dance and just tries to counter, and it's not a good spot to be in. O'Malley's fast, and just like the Chris Moutinho fight, he doesn't have to knock you out. He just needs to continuously throw that volume, touch away at you, and the judges are going to like the looks of it, right? So I got O'Malley by decision, plus 160, just because of that legendary durability from Pedro Munhoz. But that being said, like, O'Malley is kind of one of these guys that you may be prone to classify as an apple pie shitter. And like Pedro Munhoz, a 1-4 run, as you mentioned, doesn't look good, but it looks a lot better when you consider that run is the current UFC champion, Aljamain Sterling, the greatest of all time in Jose Aldo, former champion Dominic Cruz, who he dropped, by the way, a robbery against Frankie Edgar, and he beat the crap out of Jimmy Rivera, who barely wins bare knuckle boxing matches now. So, I mean, I don't know. It's been a long run for Pedro. I think he's a live underdog, but that plus 160 O'Malley by decision is just too much for me to look away from.
Yeah, it all depends on whether Pedro can get that leg kick going. If he can, things are going to get iffy for Sean O'Malley there. But if he can't, Sean O'Malley probably just cruises pretty much. And it seems like you agree with that as well. All right, let us move on to the next fight here. We got a banger here between Robbie Lawler and Brian Barberena. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 120 for Lawler, plus 100 the return on Brian Barberena. Interesting fight, close fight on paper. Brian Barberena currently riding a 2-fight winning streak. He defeated short notice Darian Weeks, where he was able to pretty much outwork him. He got outstruck in that fight, even got taken down 4 times, but was able to land the more devastating blows in that fight, taking home the unanimous decision victory back in December of 2021. And then most recently in Matt Brown's backyard, outstrikes him by 30 strikes there, gives up 5 takedowns, but still nullifies the amount of control time that Matt Brown was able to get in that fight and just outworks him, wins that fight by split decision. Very close fight, but still comes out on the winning end. On the flip side, for Robbie Lawler, rough stretch over his last, 7 fights. He's 2-5 in that run. But that also includes that that first loss was to Tyron Woodley, where he lost the title back in July of 2016. Bounces back with that great win over Donald Cowboy Cerrone in a great back-and-forth fight where he was able to land the bigger shots there. But then that started a 4-fight losing streak where he loses to Dos Anjos, if I'm not mistaken. That was in Winnipeg, of all places. Then he loses to Ben Askren. Ben Askren landed 0 significant strikes in that fight, but still managed to get that bulldog choke and get him out of there. He almost killed Ben Askren that night, if you guys remember. Herb Dean wanted to see a dead body that night, it seemed like. But loses that fight. Then he gets just 2 tough matchups, man. Colby Covington outstrikes him by 100 significant strikes while landing 10 takedowns in that fight. And then the Neil Magny fight, Neil Magny just outworks him back in August of 2020. If I'm not mistaken, that was a short notice spot for Robbie Lawler as well. Not something that we're used to seeing him take, short notice fights, especially against a guy like Neil Magny. Comes up short in that fight, loses that fight via decision. But then most recently back at UFC 266, picks up that big win over Nick Diaz, where it seems like Nick just kind of gave up, right? Like it seemed like he just was like, you know what? My nose is bleeding. I'm good. I didn't sign up for this shit. I'm fine. Now he's getting a solid opportunity here against Brian Barberena, a guy that's likely not going to outwork him in the grappling like Neil Magny and Colby Covington did. Not a guy that's probably going to starch him like Tyron Woodley did. I lean the ruthless one here, man. I do think that Robbie Lawler stylistically should win this fight as long as he's not gun shy, as long as he doesn't, pull any of his punches. He should be able to get the better ones off here against Brian Barberena and really just touch him up here. Brian Barberena boasts a 25% takedown accuracy rate, and Robbie Lawler, even though he got, pretty bad matchups over his last couple fights, he's given up 3, 13, 17 takedowns in 4 of his last 5 fights. he still boasts a 65% takedown defense, which is not that bad, especially considering the opposition he's gone up against. So I'm going to lean with Robbie Lawler here. I think he keeps it on the feet. I think he touches up Brian Barberena. Barberena, very tough, very durable, very difficult to put away. So I do think we see this go the full 15 minutes. Over 2.5 is currently -175. Fight goes to decision around -160. But Robbie Lawler to win by decision is +135. That's probably where I would put my money if you're forcing me to play a prop here. But the money line on Robbie Lawler already seems good enough at -120. I might have to have a little bit of action on that. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm thinking much of the same thing, man. I mean, Brian Barberena has had a whole lot of health issues. He had a bad back. He ballooned up in weight. He had to cut back down. Like, even though he's younger than Robbie Lawler, his body's gone through quite a bit. And looking at his recent performances, like, I know he's 3-1 over his last 4, but all of them have been just not looking good. He got taken down 22 times in his last 4 fights. Now, when you consider the guys he fought, Anthony Ivy took him down 5 times. Jason Witt, who at least can wrestle, took him down 8 times. Darian Weeks, who is a pro boxer, took the fight on very short notice, took him down 4 times. And of course, Matt Brown, who is very decrepit at this point and not known for his wrestling abilities, takes him down 5 times. His takedown defense is non-existent. Anybody who wants to take him down is likely going to have a good chance of doing so. And Robbie not known to go out there and offensively wrestle, but Robbie's a savvy enough veteran that he realizes that's the path of victory. He's been pretty vocal leading up in fight week, leading up to this fight, that like, I know what this guy likes to do, and that's brawl and have these crazy fights, and I'd be an idiot to do that. I know I've been in crazy brawls before. I've been in these fight of the nights, fight of the years, but that's not the game plan, right? That's something that happens because you're forced to go to those deep waters. Against Brian Barberena, the path of victory would be take him down. Now, the other thing is Brian Barberena was known for legendary cardio as well, but you're seeing in his last number, he's completely gassed. He was gassed bad in the Witt fight. He was gassed in the Darian Weeks fight. He was absolutely gassed in the Matt Brown fight. Robbie Lawler's kind of got that solid fundamental style where just like he'll roll with the punches in order to catch your breath and come right back on you. Like in the Nick Diaz fight, you know, he's shelling up for the most part, but he's allowing his opponent to burn himself out because he's conserving his own energy before turning the tide. It would be much of the same here. I think go out there, wrestle Brian Barberena. If for whatever reason you're having difficulty getting him down, if for whatever reason you're starting to tire because taking him down is taxing your body, then it's just like wait for your opportunities standing. This guy throws a lot of flim-flam, tons of volume. You need to sit down and counter and land the more meaningful blows. So I got Robbie Lawler prevailing in this fight. And of course, Robbie Lawler is an excellent price tag if you have any type of faith in him. -120 over a guy like Brian Barberena seems pretty good. Although I will fully admit, I would rather him bank up the first 2 rounds and go into survival mode than get into one of these crazy slugfests, because Brian Barberena, you know, thrives in one spot, and that's just like dirty, greasy brawls in the center of the cage where the fans are going nuts. Don't give that to him. And I think ruthless Robbie Lawler is smart enough at this stage in his career to fight the proper game plan. He's got a kid, he's married, he's got shit he wants to do with his personal life. Don't stand in front of him. Fight the proper game plan. If he does so, he could beat him standing, but of course, why do it for 15 minutes when you can do it for pockets and then mix in the takedown, seal the win?
I like it. Very excited to see what Robbie Lawler looks like, especially in a fight where he has a stylistically solid matchup for him, right? He doesn't have to worry about the wrestling or crazy wrestling coming back his way or anything like that. So should be a fun one. Should possibly even deliver on fight of the night honors as well. All right. Let us move on to the next fight here. A big one here at middleweight. Probably gives us our next title challenger as well, considering Israel Adesanya has pretty much cleared the field, especially if he's able to get past Jared Cannonier later on in this pay-per-view. But we got Israel Adesanya's arch nemesis brought in strictly to hopefully fight Israel Adesanya one day. We got Alex Pereira coming in against veteran of the UFC, Sean Strickland, who's been on a pretty solid run of his own. Pretty much a pick 'em fight here. I am seeing a little bit of money coming in on Sean Strickland, making him a -115 favorite. But again, I'm seeing pickup lines pretty much throughout the board here. Very interesting fight. Now, Sean Strickland over his last several fights has leaned on a striking approach, right? He's getting in the hundreds pretty much more often than not. I believe it was October of 2018 when he had defeated Nordine Taleb by KO. After that fight, he had gotten some sort of a motorcycle accident. He went out for a while. He was pretty much 2 years to the date that he had to sit out. But then since then, coming back, he's put together 5 straight wins, and he's gotten over 100 significant strikes in 3 out of those 5 fights. One of those he got a finish in where he got 94 strikes against Brendan Allen, and he got 84 strikes against Krzysztof Jotko, but still was able to soundly outstrike pretty much all of his opponents. That's what he leans on, man. And his striking style is very like, it's very sparring-esque. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't do anything crazy. He sticks with his jab, rolls with a lot of the punches that his opponents throw back at him. That's kind of his defensive tactic in terms of just using his reach and his length to get out of the way of these big shots. And that's allowed him to, have victory in more in most of these fights. But now he's fighting a big guy in Alex Pereira, who's, I don't know if that rolling out of the way of these big shots is going to work for him here. We're talking about a 6'4" height here for Alex Pereira. That's a 3-inch height advantage on Sean Strickland, mixed in with a 3-inch reach advantage. But let's also give the power advantage to Alex Pereira, because good God, anytime this guy strikes and lands on his opponents react very badly, and it definitely sways the judges. We saw it in the Bruno Silva fight last time around, where we did see the grappling of Alex Pereira tested, and I saw shades of like early UFC Israel Adesanya in terms of his ability to get back to his feet. He does not settle on the ground at all, even after he gets taken down. He's always working to get to the cage and get back to his feet, and then get back to the work with his handiwork, and that more often than not outweighs any type of grappling success his opponents have, because when he lands with a tremendous amount of impact, and that definitely sways the judges. And Sean Strickland might outstrike him in this spot, but it might be the power strikes of Alex Pereira that sway the judges more to his side. Like I said, Strickland will likely get into the 100 range mark here, especially if he doesn't get knocked out. But it's going to come down to, will the volume outweigh the damage that Pereira is inevitably going to land on him? And I do think that's going to be the case. I do think that we'll see Pereira's damage way more here. But I don't think we're going to need the judges, man. I'm a little bit skeptical about that defensive style of Strickland here. I don't think it's going to work against a guy like Pereira. I think Pereira will be able to catch him on the chin. I think he's going to be able to put him down and put him out. I think it's just a matter of time before Sean Strickland starts shooting. But even looking back at some of his tape, man, not the most proficient grappler, or sorry, I should say, not the most proficient wrestler. I know he landed a couple of takedowns against Uriah Hall, but once he got him there, wasn't able to do much solid work, right? It was in the 4th round where he finally got like 2 minutes of control time on top of Uriah Hall. But I think with the jitteriness and the squirminess of Alex Pereira on the ground, and the willingness to not settle on the ground, will allow him to get back to his feet, get back to his handiwork, start to touch up Sean Strickland again, and eventually find that knockout blow. The price tag on Pereira by knockout is just not the sexiest to me, though, right? It's plus 140. It could go the full 15 minutes as well. I could see this being very competitive for sure, but I do think at a certain point in time, Pereira is going to find that chin of Strickland and put him out here. On the flip side for Strickland by sub plus 600, not a bad look, considering he'll likely have the jiu-jitsu advantage, but I just don't trust his ability to implement it effectively here against a guy in Pereira that's not going to settle for any position. So I think we solidify one part of our potential next title fight here with Alex Pereira punching his ticket to a title shot, and I think he gets it done via knockout. Before I swing it on over to you, Cody, this is the special prop parlay, or sorry, special prop that Cloudbet has put together for this specific fight. So they have a strike spread. So like point spread for basketball, they actually have a strike spread for this fight, and it's set at minus 4.5 strikes for Alex Pereira, meaning he needs to finish this fight with at least 5 or more significant strikes landed on Sean Strickland. I'm actually leaning the other way. I think it's Sean Strickland who's going to have more strikes landed here. So taking him at plus 4.5 strikes at minus 110, I don't think it's going to be a bad idea, because even if Pereira wins, like I said, likely going to have lesser strikes. But even if he knocks him out, we'll still likely have lesser strikes than Sean Strickland. So if you guys do sign up to Cloudbet, like I said, link is in the description below. I'd hit that Strickland plus 4.5 strikes. What are your thoughts on that prop? And then ultimately, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, thoughts on the props, which is, would you say Strickland inside the distance?
No, so you're aware of how like point spreads work, no?
Yeah.
Like minus 4.5, plus 4.5. So this is minus 4.5 significant strikes that Alex Pereira will land. So he'll land at least 5 or more strikes if you bet on Alex Pereira, or you get plus 4.5 if you pick the Sean Strickland side. I'm picking the Strickland side because I think he's easily going to land more strikes here.
Yeah, maybe, but it's like you're saying as well. He might just go out there and get completely knocked out. Like, well, the thing with Sean Strickland is that since he's come back from his motorcycle injury, he's looked quite good, I suppose. But he's also been fighting, fairly limited level of opposition. Like Jack Marshman wasn't going to do anything to him. Brendan Allen is not a contender. Krzysztof Jotko is outside the top 15, non-contender. Uriah Hall, who wrestled a little bit, probably a fringe outside of the top 10 contender. And then Jack Hermanson. The interesting about the Jack Hermanson fight, which he won a split decision in, is that after 3 rounds, he was actually getting outstruck by Jack Hermanson. Is that he pulled it together in the 4th and 5th, sealed the deal. There's no 4th and 5th here. So he doesn't need a slow start. He needs to go out there and get at it right away. And I just think Pereira's a lot of man for him. You mentioned it, right? He's 6'4" with a 79-inch reach. If you look at everyone that Sean Strickland fights, Hermanson, 6'1", Hall, 6 foot, Jocko, 6'1", Brendan Allen, 6'2", Jack Marshman, 6 foot, Nordine Taleb, 6'1", Zaleski dos Santos, who knocked him out, 5'11". None of these guys are that big. None of these guys are these huge mountain of a men. So with Sean Strickland, it comes down to his ability to wrestle. Why would you want to stand in front of this guy? If you go out there and you wrestle, he'll have success. The guy knows how to wrestle. He did take Hall down 4 times. That would be the path here. The thing is he's such a dumbass. But you can't trust him to go out there and do that. No, you can't. Listen, yesterday he's giving interviews at Media Day, right? And he's like, oh, man, I can wrestle. I might have to. If I have to, I'm going to use my wrestling. So it's like, okay, so he's not that stupid. But then he goes on to refer to wrestling as taking the coward's way out, right? And then he proceeds to furthermore say, I can defeat any glory kickboxer in a kickboxing match. So, if they want to do these crazy little fun little prop bets, it's like, what are the chances that this guy wins and says something anti-Semitic on the microphone afterwards? Probably 50-50.
I'm not going to lie. I was considering doing that. I was considering pitching that to Cloudbet as like some crazy shit being said on the mic. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
Stupid human being, okay? And I don't mean that in his regular life where he's very stupid, but in the fight game as well. The smart path to victory would be to shoot the wrestling for sure. Neutralize this guy. Why would you want to stand in front of him? But he does have an ego. He does have that bravado. And I think part of that is, listen, I'm an elite level striker. I strike with some of the best guys in the world. I don't mind standing in front of you and exchanging punches and kicks. But none of those guys hit the way that Pereira does. The other thing with Sean Strickland is that he pretty much does all of his damage with the jab from the outside. I don't love jumping into like fight metric numbers like way too much because it doesn't really mean anything. But look at Sean Strickland versus Jack Hermanson his last time out. 81% of his strikes are targeted to the head, 15 to the body, 2 to the leg, 98% of which were thrown at distance. He's not fighting in the clinch, right? He's not throwing in the body. He's not chewing up the leg. He just jabs you from the outside. And yeah, that's worked against a couple lesser guys that couldn't really strike with him. Against Pereira, he's going to counter you. He's going to be landing the thudding leg kicks. He'll work the body. He'll land the hooks over the top. To say that Sean Strickland has a great chin, I don't know that he does, as much as he's fought a whole lot of guys that weren't really testing him. So Pereira's live in many ways. I think the fact that he's a big guy is going to help him stuff some of those takedowns, going to force him to keep the fight standing. And of course, I'm expecting Sean Strickland to just fight a bad game plan. So I know it probably sounded like I was harsh on the guy. He's Action Man's top training partner. Like, Sean Strickland came to Alberta to corner him the one time. He's, I'm sure he's a good enough guy in his own way. It's just, to be honest with you, I'm really sick of hearing this guy do interviews. Like, I just don't care. Like, he just has something stupid to say every time. I would love Pereira to just get this guy's his jaw wired shut by just cracking it, putting him away. So that's what I'm hoping they do here. And if you're the UFC, if you seriously wanted to go Pereira versus Izzy next, which I think they do, you would book this in a 3-rounder because a 5-rounder is where things get greasy. Sean Strickland's fought his last 2 fights in 5-rounders, and he got 5 rounds both times. In fact, he excelled in those championship rounds. So for the Pereira fight, you want to put it in Pereira's best ability to win. Don't make it some fight night headliner. Don't make it a 5-round fight because it's a potential title challenger coming out of it. Keep it to 3. Allow Pereira to go out, win the first 2. Sean Strickland, for all the things that he does well, finishing guys ain't one of them. Like, he's not finishing anybody. He didn't even finish Jack Marshman, despite talking all that shit and smacking him up in the head. He couldn't put him over, right? So going out there and knocking out Pereira, like, good luck, pal. Good luck. You'd probably have to fight this guy competitively for 15, and I'm thinking Pereira's going to win at least 2 of those 3 rounds. So sign me up for some Pereira. I think he could clip him and knock him out, but I'm thinking it's going to be a decision.
Remember back in the day when Sean Strickland had that little man bun? Like in his first couple fights, like he had, like, who thought he would turn out to be this guy?
Tarzan back in the, did he ever change his nick? Shit, he still is Tarzan. Yeah, no, I remember him back in the day. He was the King of the Cage champion. It's like he just went out there and was smashing guys. He was awesome. The guy had, good potential. Comes to the UFC, loses to Santiago Ponzinibbio, no problem. It's that motorcycle accident is what completely derailed him, right? Like, he shattered his body up. And like Frank Mir, he made a miraculous comeback and was able to come back to combat sports and be effective. But he was like a lower mid-range guy before. Nobody ever actually spent the time to put a microphone in front of him. And like now, because he's headlining some shows and he's fighting 5 rounds and he's working himself into title contention, like it's just so cringy every time. Like everybody went to high school with a guy like this. He's just got no filter. Right? And you're probably friends with the guy with no filter, but he was also known amongst the group as a dumbass. I think that was what it was. Like that to me is Sean Strickland. I know many Sean Stricklands, right? All of which are dumbasses. So I need him to go out there and fight like a dumbass and give Pereira the win.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's move on to our first title fight of the night. We got future featherweight GOAT Alexander Volkanovski taking on Max Holloway for the 3rd time. This time around, we're getting minus 195 on Alexander Volkanovski. On the flip side, we're getting plus 170 for Max Holloway. Now, just to give you guys some perspective, the first time they were scheduled to fight each other, which is when Max was the champion, we actually got Max Holloway at minus 190, plus 165 the return on Volkanovski. I was happy to cash the plus 165 on Volk there. The second time at UFC 251, Volkanovski back up to minus 200, which is roughly where he's at for this fight. That was a much closer fight than the first one. And, I saw some people scoring that fight for Max Holloway. I watched it back myself. I do think that Volkanovski eked out that 3rd round, which was the swing round, in my opinion. And then he won rounds 4 and 5 pretty easily in my books. The difference, though, from the second fight from the first fight is that we actually got like big moments in the form of Max Holloway dropping Volkanovski in the first and second round. I'm not sure if they actually recorded it as a knockdown. Let me just see here really quick. No, they didn't actually record them as knockdowns, but he visibly stumbled and wobbled Volkanovski in the first and second round, which is why he won those rounds pretty unanimously on everybody's scorecards. But then it started to fall off and Volkanovski really started to pick it up. The story of the first fight was the kicks of Volkanovski. He was really chewing up that lead leg of Max Holloway. Holloway was forced to fight out of his secondary stance, which usually is not the most effective for him. And we could clearly see why it wasn't effective because he was gun shy and Volkanovski was just getting up on him on numbers more often than not. Then in the second fight, looked a little bit more prepared for the leg kicks, but still he started to slow down later in that fight, allowing Volkanovski to outstrike him by, I believe it was a total of 35 strikes in the last 3 rounds of that fight, allowing Volkanovski to, regain the title in a very, very close fight. No matter how many times these guys fight, it's always going to be a close fight, right? It's going to come down to big moments like what Max Holloway was able to produce in those first 2 rounds. But if he's not able to produce those, maybe the volume of Volkanovski, the movement and, the leg kicks from the outside and the occasional crashing forward and landing his big strikes and then getting out before Holloway can hit him with anything, those are going to be the more impactful things on the judges that will likely sway the judges more towards Alexander Volkanovski. I am still going to end up on the Volkanovski side here. I just can't in good faith say that minus 200 is a great bet on him because Max Holloway is going to be there pretty much the entire time. I think the reason the line is where it is, obviously, is because Volkanovski is 2-0 against this guy already. But also, let's take into consideration the last 2 fights for both guys, right? Last time around, we saw Alexander Volkanovski go out there and just absolutely demolish the Korean Zombie and finish him, I believe, in the 4th round there, maybe in the 5th, if I'm not mistaken. And then on the flip side for Holloway, he dealt with some adversity with Yair Rodriguez. Rodriguez won that 1st round, and then he won the 5th round knowing he was down and needed a finish. So, Holloway did not look minus 600 at all in that fight. That was a closer fight, but he clearly won the middle rounds in that fight, hence why he got his hand raised that night. So, yes, he is deserving of this title shot. It's very difficult to give another guy a solid chance against Volkanovski. And Holloway will always be that number 2 guy, in my opinion. He is pretty much the Joseph Benavidez to Dominic Cruz in this situation over and over again. No matter how many times they fight, I do think that Volkanovski will come out on top, but it'll always be goddamn close. And I do expect this fight to go the distance like it always has. Fight goes to decision is currently sitting at minus 200. I like it. That would be my best bet in terms of best prop. I'd have to lean on Volkanovski by decision. That's at plus 105. I would rather play that than play Volkanovski minus 200. As if these guys fought 100 times, I think at least 95% of the time, 95 times they go to a decision. And that's probably what I would lean on most here. So I'm going Volkanovski by decision. What about yourself, Cody? Are you giving Holloway a little bit more shine here than I am?
No, listen, I mean, the two fights that they've had are ultra competitive. The last one especially could have gone either way. A lot of people complained they thought Holloway won the fight. So what you're going to get here is another close competitive fight. Probably goes 25 minutes. As you mentioned, if they fought 100 times, you think it would go 95% of the time to the scorecards. This is probably another one of those cases. It's close, it's competitive. Rounds will be swung either way. And so I got Volkanovski, but I will fully admit these value boys are onto something, right? When you get in these close 25-minute fights where you're largely striking affairs, but it's very emotional and both guys are going to have their moments, maybe a spam bet on the underdog's not the worst way to go. I didn't want to believe it because I thought Calvin Kattar would have the superior volume, be able to chip away at Josh Emmett, put up the better numbers, avoid those big shots, and win the fight. I thought he did enough to do so, but he didn't. The value side was clearly the way to go because everybody knew the fight was going to be close and competitive. It was big power versus big volume, right? They happened to side with big power. What can I do? Last week, it was the same thing with Tsarukyan versus Gamrot. Everybody knew the line was off. We were still picking Tsarukyan, but 3-1 for Munhoz Gamrot? Has anybody watched Munhoz Gamrot fight before? The dude's 17-1. The one loss, a debatable split decision against an absolutely monster of a man. Two-time two-division KSW champion, near flawless, Polish GSP, 3-1 underdog. So a lot of guys spam bet Gamrot, and they were rewarded for that as well. This is very much of the same. You know it's going to be close. You know it's going to be competitive. And you know that there's probably some judges out there that, hey, Max probably deserved to win the last one. Max might be very competitive in this one. If you give the decision to Volkanovski, it's dead in the water. 3-0 Volk. These guys will never fight again. If you give the fight to Max Holloway, we've got a fourth fight on the way. The money's in the quadruple, whatever you would call it. I don't know.
Quadrilogy.
The quadrilogy. The money's in the quadrilogy, Manpreet. The only other sport I've seen guys fight 4 times all the time was K1, right? All the time they would fight 4 times. And it would be like, dude, Mark Hunt doesn't have a chance against Jerome Levander. I know this. Oh, shit, he just knocked him out, right? Like the fourth fight, usually good for the underdog. So whatever, there's some storyline.
Or the PFL, right? Because they're just fucking fighting each other all the time. We're gonna get Magomed Karamov against fucking Cooper 17 by the time everything's wrapped up.
Yeah. And then the thing with PFL, it's like Cooper. I bet Cooper to beat Magomed Karamov. Hit the underdog money. So elated. I fucking told you so. And then he loses as a 9-1 favorite over a bum his very next fight. So. Well, Leal's not a bum, but you know what I'm saying. Like, should he have lost that fight? What the hell? That's the fight game. PFL is also real greasy, so maybe, watch out there. This, I don't expect it to be that. It's just all the fights were very competitive. I loaded up on Volkanovski the last fight against Max Holloway. He loses the first 2 rounds. The third round, very close, very competitive. Could go either way. I thought the leg kicks added up for Volkanovski. He won in the third. And, of course, he won the championship rounds. The key here, though, is Max Holloway has never been out-volumed by anybody. He owns the sports record, landing 445 against Calvin Kattar, a volume guy. He beat Yair Rodriguez, landing 230. Yair Rodriguez, a volume guy. Nobody goes out there and lands more significant strikes in a fight than Max Holloway, of course. Except for the 2 times he fought Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski's got him figured out. The leg kicks are an excellent way to cause him to move to his southpaw stance. Defensively, he's not as sound from southpaw. He doesn't let that straight left go as much. Holloway's in it to win it. The guy's a scrapper. He's got that BJ Penn just scrap mentality from the island. Dude's going to be in it for a hard 25 minutes. But I feel like the progression from Alexander Volkanovski into such a well-rounded fighter is there. Volkanovski had moments in all of his fights where it's like, damn, Jose's coming on, but it's like he shuts it down. Brian Ortega, triangle choke, guillotine choke, puts him in all types of nasty spots. The more you bring, the better he comes out. It's like there's levels, right? And the more you up your level, the more he matches you. Max Holloway fought an ungodly fight the last time in the rematch, and all it did was cause Alexander Volkanovski to make championship level adjustments mid-fight and come back and win the 4th and 5th round, which are rounds he needed to do the job, right? I think he's continuously getting better. With Max Holloway, there's issues about the weight cut. There's issue about where his head's at. There's issues about the motivation. I'm sure he's ultra motivated for this fight, but he took a lot of unnecessary damage against Yair Rodriguez his last time out. That's not the kind of championship quality I need to see from him at this stage, and I feel like Volkanovski chips away. Volkanovski's money line does not look good. Fortunately for you, you've seen them fight twice. Both times he was able to win decisions. I think this one's much of the same, so I'd be looking to improve that by going Alexander Volkanovski by decision. But, of course, if you are a value boy, undeniable Max Holloway by decision. And if you are a greasy value boy, split decision. Split decision. You're seeing splits in all these main events recently. Nobody can agree on it, right? So the price is egregious, but it's like that. There's huge plus money there.
I like it. And one last thing on this matchup, Max Holloway holds the record for most significant strikes landed by a mile.
Yeah.
He has 1,000 more significant strikes landed than number 2, who is Frankie Edgar at just under 1,800. Max Holloway all the way up at 2,800. Crazy stat there.
Jim Miller has like 20 fights more than him, or whatever it is, like 15 fights more than him, and he's like thousands of strikes back. Holloway's a special talent, but you know what? I remember Brett Favre used to be my boy right back in the day before the dick pics. You know, I don't know what the hell was going on with that, right? But like Brett Favre was my boy, and I remember I was like, oh man, Brett Favre is he was the touchdown leader. He had most touchdown passes, and I remember someone was like, he's also the interception leader as well. I was like, what the fuck you mean? It's like, well, yeah, he's thrown the most touchdowns, and as a result, he's also thrown the most interceptions. So when you look at Tom Brady now, it's like much of the same. Brady's been around so long, he owns all these touchdown records, but as a result, he like also owns these interception records. You stay around long enough, you're going to fuck up a little bit along the way. Max has these striking numbers, but do you want to see how many strikes he's absorbing per fight? Because he's way up there as well. Most guys aren't absorbing 4.7 strikes per minute and are considered world class, right? But that's where he's at. So at some point or another, guy's only 30 years old. I'm sure he's fresh, but you know, you're an OG fight fan, so you remember he's had a little bit of trial of tribulations. Yeah. He pulled out of a fight with Max Holloway like 2 days out of the fight with a bad weight cut in a fight to 55. Right? He failed medical exams saying, you know, well, we want to have another MRI and just make sure everything's cleared here. His speech, although he's got a lot of Hawaiian slang, so like I'm not faulting him for that, does noticeably seem a little bit different. So I hope he's okay. But being a warrior, being a world-class guy, it has its ups. It also certainly has its downs. And I just feel like Volkanovski's in the spot in his career to, you know, put him away. Maybe not put him away by the finish, definition of put him away, but put him away, like close a chapter of this book and send this guy back.
Yeah, in terms of how, like, obviously Jim Miller has way more fights than Max Holloway, but in terms of actual fight time, Max Holloway has 4 more minutes of fight time than Jim Miller. But we know Jim Miller, you know, a lot of
one round, baby.
Fights. Exactly,
yeah,
that's all he needs, pretty much. Exactly. Max Holloway likes to get extended, likes to go the full 25 if he can. But yeah, very interesting stat there. All right. That brings us to our main event where we got the middleweight title on the line. Shout out to the 100 live viewers that we currently have. Drop that like, hit that subscribe, show the all-star that you guys love us on their channel here, and also drop some comments. We'll try to get back to you guys on the comments as well in terms of what your favorite props are for the upcoming UFC cards. Obviously, another big shout out to BetOnline.ag, one of the best sports books out there for MMA, and not just the UFC, but for regional MMA, and usually the first guys on the block with the odds. So if you want to get in on some of those early lines, BetOnline is the place to do it. Link is in the description below. And then before we get out of here, before we get to our 3 best props, we're going to give another big shout out to Cloudbet as well, who's put together a lot of great props for the Propping You Up show. We'll touch on those very shortly, but let's get the main event out of the way first. We are going to start off with Israel Adesanya coming in at minus 500 now, plus 375 the return on Jared Cannonier. I want to try to make a solid case here for Jared Cannonier, but I feel stylistically this is the perfect fight for Adesanya to just go out there and do what Adesanya does. Cannonier, in my opinion, needs a knockout to win this fight. Otherwise, he's likely going to get touched up by Adesanya. And, you know, although Cannonier, not that bad of a striker, still, he's going to come up short on a lot of his shots here. We see the guys that give Adesanya trouble are the guys that are roughly his size, Jan Blachowicz, who don't have to, play on the outside with Adesanya. They can just get in, and they don't have too far or they don't have much distance to close to get to Adesanya, compared to when Adesanya is fighting at 185 pounds and he has this tremendous height and reach advantage over his opponents. Height advantage is obviously going to be here for him against Jared Cannonier. I believe it's a 3-inch height advantage, actually about a 5-inch height advantage that Adesanya is going to have here. And he'll obviously have a 3-inch reach advantage as well. Again, I'm interested to see how Adesanya approaches this. Does he look for the calf kick like he did against Paulo Costa, or does he just stay content with just outstriking his opponents from the outside, using that lengthy 1-2 and that high kick that he likes to use? And then on the Cannonier side, he's not a proactive grappler by any means, right? He likes to go out there and put his leather on his opponent's faces. And if he's not able to do it successfully enough here against Adesanya, I just don't see where he wins this fight. I'm usually against parlaying minus 500 favorites, but goddamn, like this seems like how does Israel Adesanya shit the bed here? Does he get knocked out? That would be very difficult to see. Does he get out grappled? That's very difficult to see as well. Like it wasn't that long ago. Like I was at the Apex watching Jared Cannonier go, round and round with Kelvin Gastelum. Not a good look for him. So I really think the only reason Jared Cannonier is getting this title shot is one, he's coming off a win over the next guy who was Derek Brunson, who was on a bit of a streak. And the fact that he's already cleared out the division. He's already fought Robert Whittaker twice. He's beat Paulo Costa. He beat Marvin Vettori. Jared Cannonier is really the only one left outside of Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira, who will likely be the next title challenger after this weekend. So I'm going to lean Adesanya, and I just think he paints a beautiful picture here. I don't know if he knocks out Cannonier. Obviously, we saw Derek Brunson land a big shot on Cannonier, drop him early in that first round. Wasn't able to close the show there, but I think that we'll see Adesanya kind of just pick him apart here and go on to win a decision. I'm going to say plus 125, plus 110 for Adesanya to win by decision. Sign me up for that. If you can get KO/decision, that's not a bad look either, but I think that's pretty chalky at this point in time. But I do think that is the best way to play Adesanya. I'd be surprised if he submits Cannonier or if he even looks to go that route in this fight. But yeah, I got Izzy. I think he cruises in this fight. I don't see what Cannonier does that will disrupt him. What about you? How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I got much of the same. I think Jared Cannonier is a prototypical fighter that likes to come forward, likes to try to engage, likes to try to land those big shots. But you need so much more to beat Israel Adesanya. Like I'll admit, I was one of these idiots that thought that maybe Paulo Costa's got a chance because he's so damn big, he's so damn strong, he's reckless, and he's willing to take a punch. But when you see the levels of one guy is a brawler who's flat-footed, trying to line you up with one big shot, and one guy's out there surgically picking you apart, like everything he does is super methodical. At range, he's just able to dictate all the action. Of course, Marvin Vettori is muscle bound. He's a little slower, right? Robert Whittaker is a fine striker in his own right, but none of these guys have really been able to bridge that gap and get towards him. Does it seem like he's playing with his food a little bit at times? Yes, certainly does. But I think in many ways, John Jones did the same thing. He's so long and rangy that it's like you've got to really do a lot to close the distance on him that he doesn't really do anything more than he needs to. He could finish you. He could just pick you apart. He could be okay with picking you apart for 25 minutes from the outside en route to a decision victory. So with Jared Cannonier, it's like, well, what has he got? Well, he's got the big power, and he's willing to take a punch to give a punch. And if he can close out the pocket, maybe he goes and he lands something. Maybe. Here's my issue. Jared Cannonier's last 8 fights have featured a knockdown, and not necessarily always him. He got dropped hard by Jan Blachowicz. He got knocked out by Dominic Reyes. He got dropped by Robert Whittaker and held on. He got dropped last time out by Derek Brunson. The guys in these drag him out tough type fights where no doubt he can put hands on you, but at the same time, like sometimes he's a bit of a defensive liability. That's how I see this one going. Go look back and watch Dominic Reyes versus Jared Cannonier, okay, which is at 205 pounds, I will admit. He's got absolutely no ability to bridge the gap on a southpaw striker who's throwing body kicks from the outside. He can't. And Israel Adesanya is an excellent switch stance striker who will be able to kick from both stances. Jared Cannonier just allows his body to get mauled up. Eventually, he gets desperate. He tries to bridge the gap and throw with hands, but he's there to get intercepted. He's not exactly the most durable guy going, and if he tries to make a fight, he's going to get hit. The Kelvin Gastelum fight, he got outstruck 89-81 by Kelvin Gastelum, who I understand put up a hell of a great fight against Israel Adesanya once upon a time. But that was a long time ago. Izzy's advanced a lot since then. He looks a lot cleaner since then. Whereas Jared Cannonier is there for those type of fights. Here's the other issue. In 5 rounds versus Gastelum, he landed 81. The other fights where he's gone the distance, say him versus Robert Whittaker, he landed 53 over 3 rounds. It's not enough. I get he's knocking out people in some other fights or he's getting knocked out in some other fights, but his volume's low. To fight 5 rounds versus Izzy Adesanya, you're going to have to put over 100. So at first I'm thinking lines wide, but I want to improve it. Israel Adesanya, he's been playing with his food his last 2 fights. It looks like he's falling into a more of a decision guy type role. But the more you watch the tape on it, at some point, probably maybe 3rd round, maybe 4th round, he's going to clip Jared Cannonier and put him away. So I got Israel Adesanya inside the distance.
I like it. And I love how you almost keep slipping up on Jared Cannonier's name, but that's what he's going to need. He's going to need to become Jared Cannonier to win this fight, in my opinion. Like, I really think that's what it's going to take for him to overcome this mountain.
Yeah, I mean, the guy used to fight at heavyweight once upon a time, right? So it's like he's a big, strong, physical guy, but there's no denying that he's now, what, 30? Is he 37, 38 years old?
I believe he's 37.
He's 38 years old, sorry. Yeah, he's just turned 38 a couple months ago. I'm not saying that he's necessarily slowing down. It's that he realizes when you have that much muscle and your chest that big, like, you can't be going out there and throwing, big combinations. You're waiting on that big punch. You're waiting on that one singular strike. Of course, he's got enough power to knock out Israel Adesanya. But the thing is that it's MMA. Anybody can knock out anybody. Being smart, being defensively sound, being, good, quick-footed, good footwork, a great understanding of that range. That's what makes you effective, and that's what Israel Adesanya is able to do. I will admit, if you push the pace on him, you come forward, that's what's going to open up his strikes, and I need Cannonier to do that. I need Cannonier to try to boss him around. I need Cannonier to try to make something happen. But eventually, a rhythm's going to be set here by Adesanya. He's going to cook him with the lead kick to the body. That's going to drop his hands, and eventually it's going to be a kick that's going to square up upstairs, or the straight left's going to land on the money and wobble him. Once Cannonier gets wobbled, guys have had excellent success pouncing on him, and I think that's what Adesanya is going to be able to do. So it's a good card. I think I'm 5-1. I really don't like the money line, but it's probably going to be a top ticket kind of play. And then you've got all the reason in the world to hedge out. You've got so much plus money available on Jared Cannonier, or you can put your big boy pants on and just let it ride and feel good about the fact that you've got a legitimately good, maybe one of the better 185 pounders to ever walk the planet. And I think he's motivated to keep the legacy going and set up these big fights against other guys down the road. Cannonier is just quite simply, a roadblock on the way to greatness. He realizes that, go out there, get the job done, preferably by TKO. Because when I say inside the distance, he ain't subbing him, right? So I mean, when I say inside the distance, I mean by knockout. If you were going to bet the inside play, you might as well just take that Israel Adesanya by knockout.
Like Cody said, top ticket material is Israel Adesanya minus 500, because if you're riding high and you get to the main event there, solid head spots, not just on the money line for Cannonier, which obviously would be around plus 375 right now, but even his KO prop, which hangs around plus 600 at certain spots, as I believe that's likely his best way to win this fight. He's not winning minutes. He's not winning rounds. He's not grappling Adesanya here. He needs that big shot. Otherwise, he doesn't win.
One thing I could think of is if the Yoel Romero fight played out again, where it's like they just stared at each other, because it's a terrible fight, and it's honestly a terrible fight that like could have been scored for Yoel Romero. It could have been, right? So on that hand, it's like, man, is this guy trustworthy? 5-1? Is he not just going to go and stare at him like he's done it before? But he shit on Rose Namajunas a few like last month, being like, terrible fight. I would never do that. Yo, dog, you would do that. I've seen you do it before. But yeah. I'm hoping that's causing him to be like, yo, the way to get the big money and the big paydays is talk shit, but back it up as well. So, like, I need to go and knock out 38-year-old Jared Cannonier and make a statement. Back-to-back decision wins, cooled or wins, go and get a finish. I think he's going to go and do that.
I like it. All right. Let us move on to the cloud bet special props. Then we'll get to our 3 best prop bets to finish off this show. Let me just pull it up here. Whoop. Why is it not? Hold on, give me 1 sec. There we go. All right, special props courtesy of Cloudbet. Again, link is in the description below in case you guys want to bet on some of these. First is the hype train wins. We got 3 hype trains on the card here. We got Sean O'Malley, we got Ian Garry, and Alex Pereira as a hype train of his own. If you want 2 of them to win, it's plus 114. 1 of them plus 250. 3 of them plus 320. And if you don't think any of them win, you get in plus 1600. We are also getting a Team America parlay. I did not come up with this one. Shout out to the Cloudbet crew for coming up with this one. But Team America is pretty much Jared Cannonier, Max Holloway, Sean Strickland, and Sean O'Malley. If all 4 win, you can cash out plus 2,900. If all 4 don't win, plus 10,000. Maybe it's a parlay piece for you guys. Who the fuck knows?
That's crazy, dude. You get that Team America parlay. The first guy's from Alaska. The second guy's from Hawaii. We're really stretching all the states here. The one guy, if it was the 1800s, would have been fighting to split up America. And O'Malley, he's just a stoner. He would have. I don't know what his story is, but all right, I'm in on that. I like where their imagination's at.
They also have a Team America Strikes prop here. So significant total significant strikes from all 4 of those guys that I just named, Cannonier, Holloway, Strickland, O'Malley. They have it set at 375.5 significant strikes. So I think a large part of that is Max Holloway. They think he's probably going to get like 200 significant strikes there. Let's see if the rest of the field can make up the 175. But if you have a solid read on that, you can choose over or under there. Now I'm going to ask you, Cody, a couple of the ones here. Fastest finish on the main card. Where are you leaning with?
Fastest finish on the main card, I have got to go with. Geez, man, these guys are all cast iron durable. Yeah,
know,
like
right?
what if
It's
they all
tough.
go to decision? Do you have a void bet or do you lose?
I'm not. I think
I gotta go Izzy. I gotta go Izzy simply because I think O'Malley's gonna be teeing off on Pedro all night. I could see Robbie and Barberena going to decision. Max and Volkanovski's going to decision. Pereira versus Strickland very likely goes to decision. So by de facto, it says fastest finish, but if it happens at 22 minutes into the fight, it's still the fastest one. It's the only one.
Yeah.
So I guess give me Izzy at plus 600.
I'd go with Pereira at plus 650 again. I don't think these are going to be like first round finishes or anything like that. But out of all those fights, I think the only one that we really see a finish out of, like, again, I'm leaning Adesanya by decision, but I could definitely see a finish there. But I think Pereira is probably the most likely to get a finish out of that entire main card. And at plus 650, I wouldn't mind that.
I like the under in the 375.5 significant strikes for Team America simply because let's give Holloway 100, right? And let's give Strickland 100. And let's give O'Malley 100. Cannonier ain't getting no 75, right? So like he's the outlier. And that's still giving the other guys all 100. Whereas like O'Malley could, I don't know, he could land way more. Strickland could land way more. Holloway could land way more. And then they just make up the difference for Jared. But that still seems high enough for just these straight up striking battles. And then fight of the night. Let's see what we like here.
Sorry, I do have another page of a couple more props, but yeah, fight of the night. What are you leaning on here?
I would go with Holloway versus Volkanovski. You've seen how good and competitive it was the last couple times. It's high drama, it's high emotion, co-main event. I think that Holloway's going to bring his absolute best. I think Volkanovski's going to match him. It's what's beautiful about mixed martial arts is they're capable of doing everything. They can wrestle. First time, Volkanovski never takes him down. Second time, 3 takedowns, right? You see that this is mixed martial arts and there are, different avenues to getting the victory. I think it's going to just embody everything. It'll be close. It'll be competitive. It'll be 25 minutes. It'll be high emotion. It's got everything written for a fight of the night.
Yeah, I'd split between a Holloway Volkanovski as well as Barberena Lawler. I think that could be a fucking scrap and a half, especially if both
Turner Riddell is also plus 1,700. Turner Riddell, like shit.
Value there. If you want to talk about value, boys, that's probably a value right there, honestly.
Yeah, because if Turner absolutely wipes this guy's ass for the first 5 minutes, and in the second round it's some big heroic comeback, fight of the night written all over it. 1,700, like goddamn.
I like it. All right, last page here for the props. Total submissions. We'll try it again. You want to be Mystic Cody once again?
Okay.
Total submissions is over under 2.5.
Okay, it's over under 2.5. So nothing from the main event, nothing from the co-main. I don't think Strickland's going to catch him, and Robbie's not looking for it. O'Malley could get sub. I just don't see it going that way. Not Riddell. Although again, like Turner could slap one on. I just don't see it happening. Jim Miller, I think, is going to keep punching. Ian Garry's going to hold on for a decision. Dreykus is going to melt him with the left hand. Hall is going to soar through the goddamn air like a beautiful, majestic eagle and KO him with a flying knee. Barber's going to grind her. Julia might snag up an under. I'm going with the under. Yeah. The common thought is Julia with the armbar and Andre Muniz with whatever the hell he wants. That gives you 2. And then your options here would be Jim Miller could snag one up. Jalen Turner could snag one up. Pedro could snag one up. Sean Strickland could snag one up. I would say the under. I would say the under on the 2.5.
I'm going to go under 2.5 with Julia and Turner probably getting the subs there. Over under KOs, 4.5.
I'm thinking
3.5 last week.
Yeah. Well, we got one out of the main event. I'm hoping Pereira knocks him out. Would give you 2. Brad would either wear down Turner or Turner's going to catch him early. You might be able to get a fight doesn't go the distance in that one, which would give you 3. Miller could catch Cerrone. It could happen the other way around. That would give you your 4th. Dreykus would be good for 5. Hall would be good for 6. On a personal level, I'm leaning towards the over. I'll take the over 4.5. I'd rather if it was 4 and I could get a push if it was only 4, but the 4.5, that's how the bookie makes their money. I get it. So I'd roll with the under 2.5 on the submissions and the over 4.5 for knockouts.
I'm going to go under for both of them. I don't think we'll get that many knockouts. This probably 3, max 4, but we'll see how that plays out. Total takedowns. What are you thinking here? 26.5. I'm leaning with the under. Honestly, I've already looked through this myself. I'm leaning with the under 26.5. I think more often than not, the unders for the takedowns have hit, but they are starting to drop them with every single card pretty much. But I still think it's going to be under 26.5. What about yourself?
I'm going to guess it's going to be.
Like, who's the takedown artist?
Was it 22.5?
23.5.
I'm almost. Honestly, my quick math is 24.
Oh, sorry, 26.5. Sorry, under 26.
Okay, I take the under on that. Listen, Jess Rose Clark could get easy money takedowns if she wanted, but no more than 3. Barber might be able to squeeze up 2. That gives you 5. Muniz only needs 1. Maybe he gets 2. Win or lose, that gives you 7. Dreykus and Brad, maybe you get 1 out of there. That's 8. Ian Garry could get you 3. Puts you over, probably to 11, maybe that 12 range. Miller could get 1. That's 13. Brad Riddell could as many as 4. Let's be generous. Let's say it's 15. O'Malley versus Pedro, probably not going to get much out of there. Robbie could slam up 4 or 5 in this fight. That puts you down to 19, 20 takedowns. Sean Strickland might get 2, 21. Volk might get 2. Brings you to 23. Nothing in your main event. You're still shy of your 26.5. And that was being generous in some of the spots. So under 26.5 takedowns.
I like it. And then lastly, fastest finish on the entire card. What are you leaning here?
Fastest finish on the entire card. I got to go with Dreykus to Plessis.
There you go. Duplessis is currently sitting at plus 1,700 to get the fastest finish on the card. I'm gonna have a hipster pick here. I'm gonna go with Yulia Stoliarenko at plus 2,900.
That is totally hipster, but I like it because I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind. I was just like, women's MMA has been killing me lately. I think I'd rather go with somebody. Dreykus, he's got so much power in his hands, right? Brad likes to strike, has been clipped before. I'm hoping that's the way we go.
Jessica Rose could just dive headfirst into a takedown and then eventually just get submitted like in a minute. It could absolutely happen. Which is
Jim Miller at plus 1,600's live too.
Not bad.
Just because Cerrone is not really one to take a whole lot of damage early, and Jim's a quick starter. So, we noticed last week, who ended up being the quickest finish on the whole card, my friend? Please remind me really quick.
Cody
Durden.
Cody Durden. Yes.
Why was Cody Durden the guy? Well, because JP Buys couldn't take a punch. So now I'm thinking, who's got the worst chin on the whole card? Well, I suppose I'd probably be Donald Cerrone.
Yeah.
So I would maybe have a little look at Jim Miller plus 1,600.
I love it. All right, let's get to our 3 best prop bets. Then we'll get out of here. I'll kick it off as always. Like I just said, I'm going Stoliarenko VSL plus 350. I really like that spot here. I do expect Jessica Rose Clark to get this into the grappling at a certain point, and I think she's going to end up paying for it. I think Stoliarenko finds that submission, gets the 9th armbar victory in her 10 career wins, adds another arm to her mantle over there in Lithuania. Secondly, I'm going to go Volkanovski by decision, plus 105. Not too many props I'm liking on this entire card, but this is definitely one of them I feel comfortable with. Again, I like the fight goes to decision at minus 200 more than I do like Volkanovski money line, but in terms of a specific prop, Volkanovski by decision seems to be the way to go. And then lastly, I got to go Adesanya decision plus 125. Cannonier can be clipped. He can be hurt. Cody has definitely scared me a little bit in terms of thinking that Adesanya will get a late finish here. It's absolutely live, but I think that we'll see him just pick him apart from distance. I think we'll see a solid enough durability from Cannonier to make it the full 25 minutes. I will say this before I pass it on to Cody. There is one on there that I wanted to make my own, but again, since it's just 2 of us, I want to give you guys more variety of props here, and I'll definitely let you guys know as soon as he says it. So
I think I know which one it is. And when I sent it to you, I was like, is he going to think this is crazy? But then we talked and we're on the same page. So O'Malley by decision plus 160. Again, he's got such a good style to, Matador, a guy like Pedro Munhoz, who's very flat-footed at times, a little bit slow, a little bit plodding, and just be rangy and long. And if you can do that, you can definitely snipe him from the outside. Don't get your leg chopped off. Don't fall to the ground with him. He's very durable. Mind your P's and Q's. But the speed advantage is going to be astronomical for O'Malley. I think he's going to chew him up for the tune of plus 160 by decision. Moving over, we got a plus 200 Ian Garry by decision. This one's not exactly sexy in the sense that Garry has not looked good in either of his 2 fights so far. And the thing with Gabe Green is like he's a perennial underdog, a guy that's just got that ability to keep fighting, persevere, go into some bad spots, do whatever needs to be done to secure the victory. So one guy's a guy that's made a lot of people money, and a guy in Garry that undefeated but looks wonky at times. I truly do believe that the judo black belt is going to allow him to get this fight to the ground whenever he wants to. I think that his style of trying to be like a Conor McGregor, but it's all about balance and flow and trying to intercept your opponent as they come forward. Not some technical boxing match, not some technical kickboxing match, but what Gabe Green does, which is come forward and brawl. That should allow Garry to do his best work. And then I do think that, unfortunately, Gabe Green is durable enough that he will lose, but lose by decision. Plus 200. And this is the one I think we're on the same page on. It could happen.
This one coming up is the one that I wanted to pick as well. But we got to give you variety. So, Cody,
gotta give you that variety.
You have the glory if it hits.
We're going with Uriah Hall by knockout plus 400. It's obviously a good price tag. Uriah Hall not necessarily looked on the greatest run so far, but I mean, he's very durable in a submission defense. A guy that has 27 professional MMA fights, never been submitted, been in there with some pretty top guys, fought a light heavyweight in Antonio Carlos Jr., had the guy in his back for 7 to 10 minutes, survived all those spots. It's all about surviving in those early moments. Of course, you're taking on a good grappler here in Andre Muniz. He can snatch up an armbar. He can snatch up something. It's all about testing him in those first 5 minutes. His cardio will fall off. His wrestling will fail him, and he does not have any striking to rely on. At some point, too, maybe we get taken down. Maybe we lose the first round. Maybe the second round's not going our way. If Hall can continuously make him work, he'll get sloppy. He might walk into a flying knee. He might get caught with the flying hook kick. It might quite simply just be a straight left hand down the pipe. Something at some point will knock him out. He's had 4 career losses. All 4 of them are by knockout, 3 of which in the first round, 1 of them a minute into the second round. He's there to get clipped. No one's done it yet because he's been fighting the Eric Anderses of the world. But Primetime Hall's got a little bit of magic left in the tank, and I think he's going to put it on display for us on Saturday. And if he does, plus 400, my boy, getting the job done, hopefully. So that's where we're at.
I love it. I love it. I hope we can cash that plus 400 as well as that plus 350 on Stoliarenko by sub, because I feel pretty goddamn convicted about it. Cody, I'll tee it up to you one last time to get us out of here. Anything you want to say to the fans before we sign off?
No, man, big Saturday coming up. The Dogger Pass Racing horse is actually qualifying on Saturday. Hey. So, yeah. He's in the box, ready to go, 11:50 a.m. They'll have the qualifiers. They'll be on like a live free YouTube stream, so I'll probably tweet that out. And then, the gang's been super patient. We've been having a lot of fun with it, so we're hoping he qualifies well. And then beyond that, there's like 3 stages. There's gold horses, grassroots horses, and prospect horses. The gold horses race for $156,000, right? So he's looking like he could be a gold horse, but of course it's a long ways away. Fingers crossed. In horse racing, as in MMA, it don't take much for shit to go sideways on you, right? So just staying optimistic. The MMA show went well. All the support that I've been getting from the community and guys such as yourself just been awesome. And yeah, man, I'm just cool to talk props on a big UFC pay-per-view for a change. So it's also low key for our non-Canadian fans. It's Canada Day this weekend. It's a long weekend. Yeah. So PFL on tomorrow. I think I'm going to try to release a preview for that. Canada Day long weekend. Looks like the weather's going to be nice. And of course, the last little cherry on top. Oh yeah, the DOP horse, DA Jiminy Cricket, hopefully qualifying like a goddamn savage. And then see some legitimately good UFC fights on the Saturday night that we can go out there and cash. So a lot of fan favorites on this card. Even, guys that are would consider themselves casual fans. Oh, I don't know. I miss the good old days, man. I miss those big cards. It's like, dude, do you know Donald Cerrone, Jim Miller? Like, yeah, I'm not brain dead. It's like, yeah, that's a prelim, man. This is a good card, right? So I think people will tune in and have themselves a fun time. But of course, if we can help anybody with props or straight picks or opinions, or maybe, we were against them on something and it's caused them to look at it in a second light, or we're on the same page and you feel that much more confident about it, thanks for using our show as a research tool. And let's hopefully go out there and hammer it out Saturday night.
I knew there was a reason I was compelled to wear the white and red today, and it's obviously because Canada Day is tomorrow, so maybe that's why. But yes, happy Canada Day to all the fellow Canadians out there. I believe July 4th is just around the weekend as well, too, so happy Independence Day to the U.S. folks as well. But yeah, love breaking it down as always. And good luck to everybody on the props this weekend. We'll be back next week to break down the battle of the Raphaels as RDA and Physio finally throw down next weekend at the Apex. And we'll have all the props ready for you guys. Good luck on your props this weekend. And we'll see you guys next Thursday. As always, peace out.